After lunch, Chen Gu returned to the staff break room. When he opened the door, he saw Su Wan squatting by the door. "What are you doing?" "Boss, when did you get this cat? It's so pretty, but it doesn't let me touch it." Su Wan grumbled, "I just want to give it a hug." "Don't think about it. The cat is a stray and is hostile toward human." Chen Gu entered the room and placed the boards back. When the cat saw Chen Gu, it did not hiss angrily, but it did jump away like it did not want to be physically close to him. "Then why isn't the cat hostile toward you?" Su Wan was confused. Whenever she neared the cat, it would assume a hostile posture. "Perhaps it knows I'm a trustworthy, noble person." Sitting on the bed, Chen Gu stretched lazily. "Do you want to take a rest?" "It's all right. You can take a short nap, I'll wake you at 1:15 p.m. Su Wan looked at the white cat with captivated eyes. "By the way, what is its name?" "I've tried giving it many names, but it didn't like any of them. When I called it White Tiger, it was weirdly responsive, so I'm considering calling it White Tiger from now on." Chen Gu looked at the white cat and considered it seriously. "You want to call a cat White Tiger?" Su Wan thought that Chen Gu was kidding with her, but he didn't look like it. "Well, as long as you're happy." After Su Wan left, Chen Gu continued to study the white cat on the chair. This cat could see those monsters, and even a baleful specter like Xiao Xiao was afraid of it. If he could make use of it, this cat could be a useful trump card for Chen Gu, but it was a living creature with its own consciousness. However, making it obedient to Chen Ji's orders would take some time. At least after a night of interaction, the cat was no longer that hostile toward Chen Gu. The cat was clever, it knew who was good and who was bad. "Your kittens are no longer with us, even if you continue to guard them, nothing will change." Chen Gu thought about it and stood up to grab the basket. The white cat followed behind him, and the pair walked out the haunted house. Chen Gu used his hands to dig up a hole next to a tall tree. Then, he placed the kittens within. When he did those things, he kept an eye on the white cat, afraid that it might suddenly become frenzied. "I understand your pain and know how important they are to you, but you have to understand." Chen Gu squatted on the floor and slowly filled up the hole. "Everything dies, and when it does, it is returned to nature. Only by burying them can their souls return to the great cycle." He did not know whether the white cat understood him or not, but the cat kept watching the mound of dirt. Staring at the 4 kittens that slowly disappeared from view, its pair of different colored eyes danced slightly. It did not attack Chen Gu or lose its rationality, it just sat there quietly. When Chen Gu dropped in the last handful of dirt, the white cat hid inside a tree hole. No matter how hard Chen Gu tried to get its attention, there was no response. The lunch break was soon over, and the visitors returned. It was then that the white cat left the hole, but it just jumped higher into the tree's canopy. Chen Gu could not force the cat to do something it did not want to, so after a quick cleaning, he opened the haunted house for business. With the new 2-star scenario, many visitors instantly lined up again after experiencing Murder by Midnight or Minghun scenarios. The effect of the level delineation had slowly come into play. The greater the limitation, the more they wanted to try it. For thrill seekers, the unknown scenario had an unparalleled attraction. Chen Gu was busy until New Century Park closed. Before he had a chance to rest, Chen Gu followed Uncle Su to the park storage to retrieve the surveillance devices. He told Su Wan and Uncle Su to leave first before entering Muyang High School alone. He installed the camera at few key locations. The installation took longer than Chen Gu expected. When he was finished, it was already 8 p.m. After washing his face, Chen Gu called Dr. Gao and Wang Hailong before taking a taxi to Hai Ming Apartments. When he arrived, Dr. Gao and Wang Hailong were already there. The steady Dr. Gao, who had a deep appreciation and understanding of psychology, easily won over the affection of the Wang brothers. Without the introduction from Chen Gu, they were already happily chatting among themselves. "My dad and Shenglong live on the 6th floor. I've informed them of our visit this afternoon. When the three entered Hai Ming Apartments, Chen Gu frowned slightly. That stench had returned. This stench was heaviest when they passed the third floor, but the others did not seem to smell it. They acted normally, discussing Wang Xinglong's condition. What is the source of this smell? Initially, Chen Gu thought it was the bag of animal bodies from room 302, but those carcasses should have been taken care of by now, so how come the stench still remained? They reached the top floor, and Wang Hailong knocked on the door for room 601. It was a man in his 50s who answered the door. He had peppery hair and a deep frown on his face. Dad, this is the haunted house boss who experienced something similar, and this is the best psychologist in Zhejiang. Please, come in. There were many everyday items in the room. The room was not designed to fit that many people, and it appeared a bit small. I've been told of your intention. Xinglong is inside the bedroom. If you can cure his illness, you will not worry for your financial future anymore. This old father looked far more ancient than his actual age. Can we meet Xinglong? Chen Gu stood at the very back. When the door was opened, the stench hit him like a wall, but weirdly enough, none of the others reacted in any way to it. It appeared that only he could smell this stench. Okay, but I hope you are mentally prepared. Wang Xinglong's father pushed the bedroom door open. A stronger stench wafted out from the room, and Chen Gu rested his finger surreptitiously on the tip of his nose. It was not smelly per se, but it was a smell that made him feel uncomfortable. He instinctually wanted to escape when the smell hit him. The smell was like a voice telling him, "Do not get close, this thing is dangerous." Looking through the bedroom door, the small bedroom did not have any furniture, just a thin carpet covering the floor and several pillows in the corners. Other than these, the most eye-grabbing feature was the person who sat in the middle of the room. He was a squat person, perhaps only about 1.5 meters tall, and incredibly overweight. His legs were misshapen from the pressure, and he looked more like a meatball than a man. When he saw people walk in, the man grinned harmlessly at the door and raised his hand with difficulty in an attempt to wave. Whenever a new outsider saw Wang Xinglong, his father's heart felt like it was slashed by a knife. Xinglong doesn't know how to speak, but his other faculties are totally normal. Ask him anything, and he will answer by writing on the board. Wang Xinglong's father observed Chen Gu and Dr. Gao out of the corner of his eyes. He knew how unusual his son looked, and whenever someone judged his child with a weird gaze, there was an indescribable pain in his heart. However, this time was different. Both Dr. Gao and Chen Gu acted normally. Exercise can help stave away heart problems and release stress. Try not to keep him cooped up at home. Dr. Gao removed his shoes and stepped into the room. He sat down beside Wang Xinglong without a trace of disgust or condescension. Wang Xinglong did not show fear at Dr. Gao's approach, if anything, it felt like he wanted the company. He wiggled his large body with difficulty like he was trying his best to show his welcome. Wang Xinglong and Dr. Gao shared a peaceful relationship, but when Chen Gu prepared to enter the bedroom, everything changed. He followed Dr. Gao and removed his shoes, but when he stepped into the bedroom, the smiling Wang Xinglong suddenly stopped. His expression turned serious. He glared at Chen Gu, and it felt like he was a lion who felt some other dangerous beast entering his territory. Dr. Gao, who was sat beside Wang Xinglong, felt this most directly. He looked at Chen Gu with confusion. Chen Gu himself felt this. Wang Xinglong's reaction was abnormal to his eyes. What did the man sense on me? Is it the residual smell of the stray cat, or can the monster on him sense the presence of Zhang Ye? Chen Gu stopped moving and took a seat further away from Wang Xinglong. Perhaps it's the sudden influx of strangers that has unsettled him. Dr. Gao tried to smooth over the situation and started chatting with Wang Xinglong. He was a professional. He did not bring up anything related to mental disease. It felt like he was merely chatting with a friend, and Wang Xinglong slowly relaxed, using the board to respond to Dr. Gao's occasional questions. Chen Gu did not say a word, and he focused fully on listening. Dr. Gao was tactful with his speech. It might have seemed like small talk, but unconsciously, he had drawn out many secrets from Wang Xinglong, including the darkest memory from his childhood and his daily habits as well as his history with doctors. The conversation continued for 40 minutes, and the longer the conversation went on, the more Dr. Gao felt this was not a psychological patient. Wang Xinglong's mind was clear and bright. He was willing to communicate with others and showed desire to receive treatment. Listening to their conversation, Wang Xinglong's family was gratified. Despite his looks, they knew Wang Xinglong was a kind and harmless child. After the conversation ended, Dr. Gao exited the bedroom. He pulled Wang Xinglong's father to the side to ask, "The child acts very normally. It doesn't seem like he is tormented by psychological illness. I can't help but suspect he is hiding something from me." Mental patients, for the most parts, were like normal human beings. It was only when their illness acted up that they would commit actions that normal people would not understand. The child has never hurt anyone and has not done anything weird. Other than the refusal to speak and move, he is just like a normal person. Wang Xinglong's father fetched a glass of water for Dr. Gao. When Dr. Gao conversed with Wang Xinglong, the latter had told him about the childhood nightmare. A normal child suddenly lost his power to speak. Could the story he was telling be real? Wang Xinglong's father shook his head with a sigh. We have no idea whether it's real or not. We've seen so many doctors, but none of them could confirm or deny it. Whether it's real or not is not that important. The important part is even after so many years, Xinglong can still recount it in such detail. This means that the incident has impacted him greatly. As long as we can solve this problem, he should be able to regain the ability to speak. But if this incident is completely made up, how are we supposed to help him solve it? Wang Hailong asked. Even if it is fictional, every single detail in it has a real meaning to Xinglong, just like how dreams often reflect real life. Dr. Gao took out his phone to show that he had recorded his conversation with Wang Xinglong. We cannot take everything at a surface level. Temporarily, I cannot promise you anything, but I will try my best. Dr. Gao, as long as you can cure Xinglong. I don't have much confidence either. After all, his language power must have regressed since he hasn't spoken for so many years. Dr. Gao looked back into the bedroom. But the most stressing issue is not his psychological problem but his physical issue. He is seriously overweight, and this puts his life in danger. We have talked to him about this, but he dislikes exercise. He prefers to just stay inside his bedroom. He doesn't even want to move out to the living room. Wang Xinglong's father was also frustrated. Try to communicate with him and tell him that this is normal to change his worldview and perspective. Then his action might change. Dr. Gao discussed the situation with Wang Xinglong's family outside the bedroom. Inside the bedroom, Chen Gu sat across from Wang Xinglong. By then, the smile on Wang Xinglong's face had disappeared. His beady eyes that almost disappeared among his folds of fat narrowed into slits as he studied Chen Gu. Wang Xinglong, I want to help you, so I hope you will stop hiding things from me. Chen Gu maintained a safe distance from Wang Xinglong. The man was very cautious of Chen Gu, and Chen Gu refused to get any closer because of the stench that came off the man. However, it appeared like only Chen Gu could smell it. Grabbing the board, Wang Xinglong wrote, I'm not hiding anything, I've told you everything. You know whether that is true or not. Chen Gu lowered his voice. Their focus is on why you aren't talking, but I'm different. I'm more curious about the other memory that you most detest. What happened to you when you were inside the third sick hall? The mention of the third sick hall caused the flesh on Wang Xinglong's face to shake violently. His chubby hands clenched into fist, and his body shook unevenly. Your aversion to doctors occurred after you left the third sick hall, so what happened to you inside that hospital? Chen Gu held Wang Xinglong's fists. You are a normal person, but you are under the threat of something abnormal. Tell me the truth, I can help you. Wang Xinglong rejected Chen Ji's offer. He suddenly went berserk and shoved Chen Gu away with powerful force. Catching his breath, Wang Xinglong glared at Chen Gu. After a long time, he wrote this down on the board. We have both transformed into monsters. Instead of worrying about me, you'd better worry about yourself. The smile on Wang Xinglong's face had long since disappeared. He rubbed the words off the board and pain flashed across his beady eyes. We have both transformed into monsters. Chen Gu knocked into the door, and pain radiated from his back. Hearing the commotion in the bedroom, Dr. Gao and Wang Xinglong's family ran in. Chen Gu, what happened? I accidentally slipped and knocked into the door. Chen Gu rubbed his back as he stood up. Is it serious? I have some ointment somewhere. Wang Xinglong's father did not doubt Chen Gu, and he turned back into the living room to go look for the ointment. However, Dr. Gao seemed to have noticed something. His eyes scanned the unruffled carpet but did not say anything. It's all right, not so serious. Dr. Gao helped Chen Gu up. They left the bedroom together. Things were not going as smooth as he had hoped. Wang Xinglong had hidden the biggest secret from everyone else. He seemed to be cooperative on the surface, but that was merely a ploy to distract everyone away from the real cause of his illness. But why would Wang Xinglong do that? He has his own difficulty. Chen Gu remembered the expression on Wang Xinglong's face when he wrote down that sentence. It was filled with helplessness and pain, but the key problem was that he did not seem to want to change. Chen Gu moved his shoulders and realized that Wang Xinglong was actually more powerful than most adults. He looks innocent but is actually very dangerous. Wang Xinglong did not want to tell the truth, and Chen Gu could not force him before his father and brothers. Even if he did decide on force, Chen Gu had no confidence that he could overpower Wang Xinglong. In the end, Chen Gu asked Dr. Gao if they could leave. He wanted to ask Dr. Gao to discover the secret Wang Xinglong was hiding. Wang Xinglong's father walked them to the door. When they were leaving each other with their contact information, through the open bedroom door, Chen Gu saw that the devastated Wang Xinglong had picked up the board again. He seemed to know that Chen Gu was watching him. He drew quickly and turned the board towards the open door. What was he drawing? A few small people was sitting inside the house. The smallest among them had a monster standing on his shoulders. The monster had its back bent as it surveyed its surroundings, like it was prepared to jump onto other people. Is he trying to give me a hint? Chen Gu memorized the drawing and left the apartment with Dr. Gao. When they left, they went down to room 304 to grab Men Nan's stuff. Chen Gu closed the door and after making sure the Wang brothers didn't follow them, he opened his lips to ask, Dr. Gao, do you think Wang Xinglong has a big problem? He is indeed a bit not normal. Dr. Gao placed Men Nan's sheets and pillows in the middle of his quilt and rolled them up. According to Wang Xinglong's father, his condition should be very serious, but from my initial diagnosis, the man is fine. He has an open, clear, and logical mind. However, this contrasted greatly with the blank smile on the man's face. A normal person would have the ability to control the expression on his face. I am sure he is hiding something from me. This patient is very smart and is an expert at hiding his feelings, but he is being too obvious about it. Chen Gu was surprised Dr. Gao had spotted it as well. After all, you're the professional, but since you have noticed that, why didn't you tell his father? Wouldn't that help with the treatment? How to navigate the relationship between the doctor and the patient's family is a complicated skill. Wang Xinglong's father might have been kind to us today, but if anything happened to his son, he would definitely be on his son's side, and he would block our access to Wang Xinglong in the future. Dr. Gao picked her up the bundle to carry out of the room. Come and help me. Grab the books and notes in Men Nan's drawer and place them in the box. They are very important to him. Chen Gu entered the bedroom and took out the books one by one from the drawer. When the drawer was almost empty, Chen Gu saw a picture sat at the bottom of the drawer. A woman was lying in a hospital bed with a patient's garb. A shy-looking boy sat beside her. Is this a picture of Men Nan and his mother? Looking at the picture, Chen Gu was shocked. Men Nan's mother in the picture, even though she had no makeup on, was incredibly beautiful. Men Nan's father still had an affair even though he had such a beautiful wife. Chen Ji's first love letter in his life came from a baleful specter, so he did not know much about romantic relationships. He felt perhaps something was not right about Men Nan's father. After placing the picture in one of the books, Chen Gu placed all the books in the box and left room 304 with Dr. Gao. After exiting Hai Ming Apartments, Chen Gu took a deep breath. Finally, don't need to take in that stench anymore. Stench? If you're talking about stench, isn't it stronger out here? Dr. Gao asked as he pointed at the rubbish that piled as high as Small Hill. Didn't you smell a weird stench in Wang Xinglong's room? No, his house is very clean, the old father has taken good care of him. Dr. Gao sighed. Actually, the child can be considered lucky. At least he has his family's support, and they all wish for him to get better. His family is indeed very kind. The worry between family members could not be faked, and Chen Gu could feel that. He took a few steps before stopping suddenly. Family? Yes, some patient's family dropped them at the rehabilitation center and left them there. Dr. Gao had misunderstood Chen Gu. He was thinking about another issue. In Wang Xinglong's last drawing, there were a few small people sitting in the drawing. The one with the monster standing on the shoulder seemed to refer to himself, so the people around him should have been his family. The monster was prepared to jump to other people, so could this be why Wang Xinglong refused to seek treatment? If he did anything wrong, the monster might harm his family. Wang Xinglong's drawing also proved that even after so many years, the 2-meter-tall monster was still standing on his shoulders, and their game was still ongoing. The stench should originate from the monster, but why only I can smell it? After solving the first problem, more problems surfaced. Chen Gu realized that he would need to enter the third sick hall to answer all the questions. After placing all of Men Nan's stuff in the trunk, Dr. Gao drove Chen Gu back to New Century Park. When his feet stood on firm ground, Chen Gu received a call from Lu Dao. Brother, Qin Guang's next live stream schedule has been announced, it's tomorrow night. So soon? Then do you know where the location will be? Muyang High School. Lu Dao mentioned a familiar name. However, this time, Qin Guang has learned his lesson. He hired someone to write a script based on your livestream, so he can now be considered paying homage and not plagiarizing, so even the platform cannot do anything to him. Chen Gu was silent for a long time, so Lu Dao thought that he was angry. Certain things are helpless, but as long as we work hard, it'll be fine. It's not that, but if you have the chance, please help me send a message to Qin Guang. What message? Chen Gu looked at the haunted house in the dark. Tell him to stop following me. If he does not, I have no guarantee what will happen to him. Are you serious? That sounds like a threat. Lu Dao did not think that Chen Gu was kidding. He did not know Chen Gu that well, but he did know that the man was a bit different from normal. No, it's sincere advice. Just tell him what I said. Chen Ji's voice was calm. He was already praising himself for how kind-hearted he was. At the end of the day, we are merely competitors. Even though he is rather shameless, I do not want to see him walk toward his death. Furthermore, his live stream involves such a large crew, they are innocent lives, so he should think about them. Competitor? Death? Innocent lives? Are we talking about the same topic? Lu Dao felt like one of them was drunk. To tell Qin Guang that if he continued to copy Chen Gu, he would die. How was he going to say that? Chen Gu, I know you are angry, but please calm down. We can use our content to surpass him, there is no need to rely on threats. If anything, this might make them sue us. Lu Dao tried to advise him. After all, The contract had been signed, and their first official cooperation began tomorrow, so he did not want Chingu to do anything stupid at such a crucial moment. You will not understand even if I explain it to you. Chingu walked to his haunted house. If there's nothing else, I'll see you tomorrow afternoon. Remember to come early. There are many details we wish to discuss with you. You got it. After hanging up, Chingu was feeling low. He did not think that the live stream was that important, be it Qin Guang or the popularity, those were added bonuses. He only cared about one thing, which was to survive and find the clues left behind by his parents. Chingu glanced toward the canopy of the tree next to the haunted house, but the white cat was nowhere to be seen. Eventually, it has left. Chingu had grown quite attached to that cat. Multicolored eyes are not common for a stray, but it is still a life, things can't be forced. Chingu was rather saddened upon realizing that the white cat had left. He entered the haunted house and found himself alone in the long corridor. The haunted house was rather lifeless at night. He switched on the corridor lights, and his lonely shadow extended down the corridor. It looked quite lonely, but he had gotten used to this already. He went into the bathroom to wash his face before turning toward the staff break room. Before entering, he noticed something weird. Why is the break room door open? There were 2 sets of keys to the break room. He carried one on himself, and the other was hidden above the door frame. It was to make it convenient for other haunted house workers. This hiding place was only known to those who had worked at the haunted house before. If it was Su Wan, she would have locked the door before she left. Looks like an outsider has snuck into the break room. Chingu took a detour to the props room to grab Dr. Skullcracker's iron hammer. He pushed the break room door open. The room was dim, and there was no one in sight. The key wasn't on the door frame. The thief has taken away the key? Chingu glanced around the room, and he realized the only difference was there was an unwashed jacket lying on the table. I remember hanging this beside the bed when I changed out of it this morning. Why is it on the table? He turned the light on and used the hammer to peel the jacket back. Underneath the dirted jacket lay a pure white cat. It moved its head with impatience, its pair of different colored eyes shining with resentment. Chingu looked behind it, and a dirty ragdoll was lying on its tail. The small ragdoll appeared like she was trying to grab onto the white cat's tail, but she did not expect that Chingu would come in so suddenly. Her body froze from the scare, and very instinctively, she pretended to be dead. Xiao Xiao. This scene surprised him. Couldn't these 2 not stand each other? White cat, jacket. Chingu glanced at the jacket, and it dawned on him. When he took the cat to the doctor that night, he used his own jacket to wrap the cat and the kittens. The smell of the 4 kittens probably lingered on the jacket. The jacket and the basket that carried the kittens were all in the break room, but the room was locked. The key hidden above the doorframe was a secret to most, but for Xiao Xiao, who wandered about the haunted house daily, she must have been privy to it. If anything, Xiao Xiao probably knew more about the haunted house than Chingu by then. Chingu pulled Xiao Xiao up by her leg and shook her twice in the air. A copper key then fell from her pocket. Are you trying to be the haunted house's manager? Chingu did not know to laugh or cry. He placed Xiao Xiao beside the white cat and returned the key to on the door frame. Standing in the cold corridor, Chingu felt the break room was weirdly bright and warm. Xiao Xiao lay beside the white cat on the table. The cat gave her a cold shoulder, but it did not push Xiao Xiao aside. It lay lazily on the table and did not seem like anything was going to affect it. Looking at this, Chen Ji's lips curved upwards. I used to stay here alone, but it has gotten quite rowdy now. After closing the door, Chingu sat on the chair. He took out the black phone and started to inspect his daily missions. The 3 missions were respectively to hire more workers, perform safety inspection, and install a sturdy door for the Muyang High School scenario. All the missions are imminent problems that the haunted house needs to solve. Chingu updated the haunted house's information on the internet by introducing the new scenario and adding in the information of the reward money. After that, Chingu posted a recruitment post online. There was only one demand: the person had to be brave. I must be picky with the recruitment. If Uncle Sue continues to help me sell ticket, we can still barely manage to get by, so this can be delayed for now. But as the haunted house grows bigger, the issue of security cannot be ignored. I should pick the security option as my daily mission. Chingu stood up again. He checked all the safety hazards in the haunted house and came up with new rules, but the black phone did not say that he was done. What's the problem? I've checked all the scenarios, why isn't the mission completed yet? Chingu stood there with the black phone. He might need to conduct a 3-star trial mission tomorrow, so he needed time to prepare. He had no time to waste on a daily mission. Wait, could it be the mirror in the bathroom? Chingu pushed open the bathroom door. The mirror on the wall was covered up by a black cloth, and the cubicle door was sealed up. The visitors come to visit during the day, but the blood door only appears at midnight. Normally, these two parties should not interact, unless someone sneaks into the haunted house at night and accidentally opens the cubicle door, like Zhangpeng. Chingu removed the black cloth and stood before the window. He had no clue about the blood world behind the mirror. He did not even know why the door appeared, much less the way to destroy it. My parents once said that the door of the third sick hall has been opened again. This means that it was originally closed. Maybe the third sick hall will have clues to closing the door. Perhaps the door in the mirror and the door of the third sick hall are connected. Then this trial mission will that much more important to me. Chingu waited until midnight, and as the second hand passed 12, the blood door in the mirror appeared on time. In just that 1 minute, various weird noises came from behind the cubicle. Compared to before, it felt like more things had gathered around the door. Perhaps when I return from the third sick hall, this door will be permanently closed. He worked on the list until 1:50 a.m. Chingu still did not feel sleepy. Every few minutes he looked at his watch, and an indescribable anxiety was spreading through him. It's still not too safe. The difficulty of the 3-star trial mission should be multiple times harder than the 2-star Muyang High School. Furthermore, I'm going in alone, I have to be more prepared. Chingu inspected his life and suddenly his phone rang. Who is calling me at 2 a.m.? Chingu glanced at the caller ID and answered it immediately. Dr. Gao. You're looking for me. I'm so sorry to disturb you so late at night, Dr. Gao said politely before cutting straight to the point. I've managed to get Wang Xinlong's medical history from his father, and when I cross-referenced it with our own patient's history, I discovered something weird. What is it? Chingu sat up straighter. For Dr. Gao to call him so late at night, it had to be very serious. This Wang Xinlong is more dangerous than he appears. In fact, when he was very small, he was involved in a murder. A murder. Chingu could not believe that the chubby kid could have been involved in something so sinister. Listen to me, this case is complicated. There was the sound of typing from the other end of the phone. Wang Xinlong received his first treatment when he was 6, and the hospital he received the treatment at was called Zhejiang Third Psychological Convalescence Center. It was a private center. It was far from the city and has been closed 5 or 6 years ago. I've heard Wang Hailong mention this hospital before. At the time, they were poor, and the place was close to their old home, so they admitted Wang Xinlong there. But how is that related to the murder? Chingu asked. When he was first admitted, Wang Xinlong, who was only 6 at the time, showcased extreme mood swings. Unable to control himself, he would attack the doctors and family members. No matter how unruly the 6-year-old was, he couldn't harm an adult, right? That was what I thought, but the files showed that in one of his crazed moments, he bit off the finger of a fellow patient who shared the same room. I have the picture. Dr. Gao sent over the picture. The gruesome parts were not even censored. Chen Gu glanced at the file. It was a patient's file. The diagnosis on Wang Xinglong was he was extremely dangerous, and the suggested treatment was quarantine and isolation. But that was only the beginning. To ensure the safety of other patients, the doctors quarantined the 6-year-old Wang Xinglong into the third sealed building, and things only got worse from there. Dr. Gao clicked on the screen. He selected the few pages that would not violate the patient's privacy and sent them to Chen Gu. In the second month after Wang Xinglong was moved into the quarantine hall, there was a harrowing murder. A nurse on duty was murdered, and after the police investigation, they confirmed that the murderer wasn't a single person. It felt like all of the patients of the third hall had cooperated to commit this murder. The patients collaborated to kill a nurse. Dr. Gao was revealing information about the third sick hall, and this was all inside information, so Chen Gu paid full attention. Dr. Gao, can you tell me about this case in more detail? That's all I have. I'm a doctor, not the police. Then, can you find more information on the other patients in the third sick hall? Chen Gu wanted to know everything about the third sick hall. Why would you want to know about that? Just curious. Don't worry, I will not leak the information to anyone else. Chen Gu made a few more promises before Dr. Gao finally agreed. There were 10 sick bays inside the third sick hall, and there were 9 patients. All of them were diagnosed to be extremely dangerous, so they were quarantined for specific treatment. The patient in room 1 was Wang Xinglong, diagnosed as suffering from happy puppet syndrome or the angel man syndrome. The symptoms include constant smiles, spasms, loss of speech, and mental retardation. He was the youngest at the third sick hall and deemed the least dangerous. The patient in room 2 was a woman, but the name is blacked out. There is no picture, and there was only an old patient's list. She suffered from heavy depression caused by Dorian Gray syndrome. Her symptoms include over-obsession with her personal image and over-reliance on makeup. She had undergone plenty of plastic surgery and was averse to the natural aging process. In fact, many female celebrities suffer from this. The third patient's room was supposedly empty, and I can't tell whether it housed a patient or not. Chen Gu was suddenly reminded of the note left by his parents. It had specifically pointed out the third room in the third sick hall. Having no records does not mean that it didn't have a patient. You have a point, but the patient's room was arranged according to their danger level, so even if the room was occupied, the patient was not that dangerous. Perhaps this was an error by the hospital. Dr. Gao paused to take a sip of his water before continuing. The patient in room 4 suffered from phantom limb syndrome after losing his arm in an accident. After the amputation surgery, he felt the arm was still on his body and could sense pain and temperature through it. The man living in room 5 was called Su Tong. He suffered from Fregoli delusion syndrome. He thought that all the people around him were disguised by a similar individual, and he lived in a made-up world. The patient of the room 6 was called Han Bauer. She was a midnight show type of host. There is no picture of her in the files, but her main doctor wrote down this sentence at the bottom of her patient's record: just how harsh must God be to have made a woman as beautiful as this? Han Bao only stayed at the place for 2.5 months before she was taken away. She suffered from a rare disease called body dysmorphic disorder. She had the tendency to exaggerate the imperfections on her body, and she could not accept the slightest flaw. When she was hospitalized, she once tried to chop off her fingers simply because the nails on both hands failed to be symmetrical. The name of the patient in room 7 has been lost, but he suffered from Cotard syndrome or the walking corpse syndrome. He believed that he was already a dead man, telling the doctors that his organs had all decayed. He announced to whoever would listen that he had seen the real world and that the reality we are living in isn't real at all. Room 8 had a reinforced steel door, and the patient inside was called Xiong Qing. This patient was once the doctor of the third sick hall. It was believed that his mind snapped after dealing with too many tortured souls. He was diagnosed with hemineglect when he was 30. This type of patient fails to be aware of items to one side of space. When asked to draw the picture of a man, he would miss out the half of the arms and legs. When asked, he said this was the real perfect form. Technically, this disease was not serious, but Xiong Qing was a perfectionist, so when he saw patients with a full set of limbs, he could not control himself from wanting to fix it. The patient in room 9 was called Wu Fei. There was not a clear diagnosis on this patient even when the hospital closed down. Some of the doctors thought that he suffered from Asperger's because he had exceptional memory and superhuman intelligence. Normally, he would not converse with others. Perhaps he thought that everyone around him, including his doctor, was too much of a dummy to communicate with. During treatment, he confessed to have done many crazy things, and some of them had involved the police, but after investigation, most of them were faked, and for the real cases, the real murderer had been caught and sentenced. They had nothing to do with Wu Fei. Wu Fei had not hurt anyone when he was hospitalized, but the hospital still decided to lock him in room 9. This was something the hospital and the police decided on after much discussion. According to how the hospital kept their patients, the patient in room 10 should have been the most dangerous, but the patient is not named. I've looked through all the patient's records, and the space for name was only filled with a 10. The doctors never mentioned him by name, and they often referred to him as the devil. This patient suffered from Lesch-Nyhan syndrome or juvenile gout. When he acted up, he would use all sorts of equipment available to ruin his own face. His perception of reality was different from normal, and he had a highly destructive tendency. Patient 10 spent most of his time tied to the bed. When he was out, he would be chained to the wheelchair with people looking after him. Actually, those with Lesch-Nyhan syndrome rarely live beyond the age of 20, so this patient 10 is probably dead now. Dr. Gao listed the information on all the 9 patients, and Chen Gu used a pen to jot everything all down. Looking at the recorded information, Chen Gu felt a chill up his spine. Dr. Gao, do you know what happened to these 9 people after they got transferred out of the 3rd sick hall? Other than Wang Xinglong, Su Tong, and Han Bauer, who had records from other hospitals, the rest of them seemed to have disappeared. Then do you have ways to contact the 3 of them? Chen Gu wanted to know more about the 3rd sick hall before starting the live stream. The contact numbers on the files are mostly useless now, so even if I give them you, it'll be pointless. Dr. Gao rejected Chen Gu tactfully. I'm calling you so late at night mainly to tell you that Wang Xinglong might be very dangerous. Mental patients morph into a different person when they act up. Do not purposely go and provoke them. If you are hurt, the law will not be on your side because these people are mentally unhealthy. What Dr. Gao meant was simple. After Chen Gu fell down, he had noticed the carpet was flat, so he suspected that Chen Gu did not trip and fall but was pushed by an outside force. He had made this midnight call to warn him of the possible dangers. I understand. I'll be more careful. Chen Gu thought about it before adding, Dr. Gao, if you find out any more information about the 3rd sick hall, please tell me. I'm very interested in that hospital. Your hobby sure is unique. Alright then, rest well. I will inform you when I come up with a new development. After hanging up, Chen Gu arranged the pieces of paper on the table, his brain mulling over the 9 patients. 10 rooms but 9 patients, why? If the rooms are arranged according to their danger level, why did the hospital keep room 3 empty? Has the room been empty from the very beginning, or was the room left empty for a patient who died in it? Chen Gu did not know when he fell asleep, but when he woke up, it was already morning. Looking at his watch, he saw it was 6 a.m. He washed his face, exited the haunted house, jumped on his bicycle, and headed for the nearest morning market. When the proprietor was finally free, he moved forward. The proprietor was a man about 40. He had noticed Chen Gu a long time ago. What do you want? When Chen Gu named his request, he felt weirdly embarrassed. I want to buy your cleaver. You want to buy my cleaver? The man's face fell, thinking that Chen Gu was ridiculing him. I'm serious. Chingu placed the money on the counter. Give me a price. After a long explanation, the man finally understood why Chingu wanted his cleaver and laughed. It's not that I don't want to sell you this, but nowadays, we have special machine to put the pigs down. You'll need to go to a butcher to find the kind of cleaver you're looking for. The middle-aged man also did not know how to respond. He had managed his stall for half his life already, and this was the first time he had come across such a request. If you have nothing else, go. I don't sell the kind of cleaver you want. Then, can you sell me the cleaver you normally use? Chingu was determined. Before the live stream, he had to obtain a cleaver regardless of whether it turned out to be useful or not. How am I going to operate this stall if I sell you my cleaver? The middle-aged man just finished when a young man with dyed hair pushed through the crowd. He looked about 19, and his jacket was tied around his waist as he yawned. When the young man appeared, the middle-aged man slammed the cleaver on the cutting board. He wiped his hands on his apron and walked toward the young man. You still know your way back home? Where were you last night? Karaoke with a few friends, then the internet cafe. The young man put on his earphones like he was trying to tune the man out. Then, why didn't you answer your phone? Years of chopping pork meant that the middle-aged man was much more muscular than the young man. He yanked the earphones out directly. I'm talking to you. The young man used his hands to cover up his ears instead. He stood before the middle-aged man and said nothing. Have you gone mute? I'm asking you why you didn't come home yesterday night. Didn't even answer your phone, what were you thinking? The middle-aged man was loud, and the customers even started to persuade him. The young man glared at the middle-aged man before finding an opening to grab the earphones and run out the market. Come back here. The middle-aged man could not chase after him since he had a business to run. He picked up the cleaver and cleaved a bone in half angrily. Looking at how angry he was, Chingu very understandably took back his money and left with the chicken. After leaving the market, Chingu was looking for his bicycle when he was approached by the young man from earlier. I hear you're looking for a cleaver. Yes, but not a new one. I need one that had been used for a long time already. I have one at home. Follow me, but don't let my father spot us. The young man led Chingu to a building near the market. He asked Chingu to wait him outside and soon came out with an object wrapped in red cloth. My grandfather was a butcher, and he planned to carry this knife with him to the grave, saying he was not going to let his children do the same job as he did. However, my stubborn dad insisted on keeping the cleaver. From then on, bad luck has followed us. He lost his business, and my mother passed away. In the end, he had to sell pork at the market to make ends meet. The young man gave Chingu the cleaver. The cleaver is cursed, so I'm not going to ask for much. 100, and it's yours. Chingu was intrigued by what the young man said. He pulled the red cloth back and took a close look at the cleaver. His young vision twitched like his eyes were pricked by needles. They only recovered several seconds later. The red cloth wrapped around a 40-centimeter long single blade. Perhaps because it had tasted too much fresh blood, the blade was a dark red color. There were grooves running down the blade, and the wooden handle looked like blood veins with lingering red lines. Chingu tried the cleaver, and it was heavier than expected. This cleaver sure is unusual. The blade was no longer sharp, but the air around it had not changed. When I was small, I saw my grandfather enter the pig-sty with this cleaver, and none of the pigs dared make a sound. The young man looked at the red cloth and extended his hand toward Chingu. If you're satisfied, pay up. Not bad, this is the kind of cleaver I'm looking for. Chingu passed the young man 100 and left the young man his phone. If your father asks about the cleaver, tell him to call me. What does this have to do with him? The young man asked emotionlessly and entered the room with the money. Your father is quick with his words and temper, but it must be difficult on him as well. Based on my knowledge, there are no butchers near Zhejiang. To ensure fresh stock, he has to wake up every day at 3 a.m. to get the ingredients from outside of Zhejiang, or he might miss the opening of the morning market. With the chicken and cleaver, Chen Gu returned to New Century Park. He still had some time, so Chen Gu looked at the list he had prepared the previous night. Honestly, he was scarred by this specific feature on the black phone. When I finished the expansion mission, I earned a lucky draw chance. The haunted house has been in business for a while already, and I have collected enough screams to trade for another lucky draw chance. I won't be so unlucky as to get a baleful specter twice, right? Chen Gu had always stayed away from this kind of game, which depended fully on lucky. If not for the pressure from a 3-star mission, he probably would have continued to ignore this function on the black phone. 2 chances, perhaps I might really get something that'll save my life. Chen Ji's finger tapped on the screen, and the wheel started to spin. As the wheel spun, Chen Gu clasped his hands together. Please, not another baleful specter. Ding! The needle finally stopped. Congratulations for winning a unique item, the White Valentine's Candy. 7% chance of this appearing when Zhanya's affection level has reached. Crazy about you. Sincerity, purity, clarity, romance. When you receive this present, your relationship will advance to the next level. White Valentine's Candy, the sweet taste dances on your tongue. When you finish the candy, Zhanya will appear. You have received the present Zhanya was unable to gift when she was still alive. Zhanya's affection toward you has increased slightly. Chen Gu had a bad feeling in his heart. He sat on the steps. I've received the present Zhanya was unable to gift when she was still alive. Goodness, this sounds so weird. A draft blew against Chen Ji's neck, and he turned back to see a candy package was sitting behind him. The design of the bag was similar to the one Chen Gu had found in the dance studio at Western Zhejiang's private academy. He opened it, and there was one piece of white candy inside. Weirdly enough, the candy had the face of a crying girl on it. This face looks like one of Zhanya's roommates. Don't tell me she has made one of her roommates into candy. Putting the candy back into the bag, Chen Gu felt like he needed to evaluate his situation. Even though I didn't get a baleful specter, it is still related to one. Is it because I'm close to the haunted house that I keep getting this weird stuff? He patted the dust on his body as he stood up. He washed his face, placed the chicken in the room, and then left New Century Park on the bicycle. According to the introduction on the black phone, there are many kinds of rewards I can get from the lucky draw. In terms of probability, it's about time I get something good. Chen Gu stood before the rising sun and tapped on the screen. The wheel turned rapidly and stopped after a few seconds. What is it? The sun fell on Chen Gu, gilding him. Congratulations for winning a rare item, the crying tape, 3% chance of winning. When he played the tape for the first time, he realized that something was wrong. The empty tape was filled with white noise that could not be erased. He tried every method to remove the white noise, and he heard the sound he made before he died. Lucky specters favored, you have won another rare baleful specter. Note, after winning 5 baleful specters, the title of specters favored will be upgraded. Chen Gu sat on the roadside with a cigarette dangling on his lips. Looking at New Century Park, which was 3,000 meters away, he sighed. I shouldn't have wasted my energy to come so far. Chen Gu stood up after finishing the cigarettes. Does anyone even listen to cassette tapes these days? Where am I going to find a player? After much difficulty, Chen Gu finally had reached a stable relationship with Zhanya, but now he had another one to deal with. Chen Gu really did not expect that he would one day be troubled by being too popular. The haunted house is big enough for the brother inside the tape as long as he doesn't create trouble. Chen Gu noticed a detail provided by the black phone. The chance of drawing the crying tape was 3%, while the chance of drawing the cursed love letter had been 0.3%. According to that probability, the specter inside the tape should not be more powerful than Zhanya. His strength was probably between a normal baleful specter and a red specter. Weaker is not so bad, easier for me to come to a negotiation with him. After all, Chen-gu was rather alarmed by baleful spectre that had their own personal page like Zhangya. Pushing the bicycle back to New Century Park, some visitors had already arrived. Uncle Su and Su Wan were already standing in front of the haunted house. Chen-gu, where have you been so early in the morning? And why are there chicken feathers stuck to your clothes? The number of visitors was not that high, and Uncle Su was considered half a haunted house worker now. When he was free, he would stand outside the haunted house to sell tickets. A morning joke. Chen-gu dusted the chicken feather off naturally and opened the gate to prepare for business. That morning, Chen-gu kept spacing out the messages from before crowing his mind. He was walking in the mist, and he could see an opening before him, but he was unable to tell whether it led to the exit or to the maw of a monster. At 4:30 p.m., Chen-gu gave Su Wan an early leave. He closed the gate and entered the staff break room. It's time to start the preparation. He placed his backpack on the table and shoved the mallet, the cleaver wrapped in red cloth, packets of salt, a lighter, and a flashlight into it. 6 packs of salt should be enough. Chen-gu then took out another large bag. He planned to bring the white cat and Xiao Xiao with him. Let me see what else I'm missing. Opening the drawer, Chen-gu saw the cassette tape sitting inside. It did not have any markings other than an irregular bloody handprint, like someone had gripped it with a bloody hand. Such an item that has already been lost in time has appeared in the haunted house's drawer. Naturally, this was the Black Phone's doing. Chen-gu did not know much about the tape, and since he was afraid that the thing inside might ruin the haunted house when he was not around, he dropped the tape inside his bag as well. That's all, I suppose. Chen-gu found Xiao Xiao and the jacket with the kitten's odor and placed them inside the bag. He negotiated with the cat for a long time before it jumped unwillingly into the bag. Stay here for a moment, I'll be right back. Chen-gu walked into the props room and saw Dr. Skullcracker's hammer lying in the corner. This thing has a certain presence to it, maybe I'll be able to use it. To fit the hammer inside his backpack, Chen-gu had to remove the mallet and 3 packs of salt. The salt might not be useful, so there's no reason for me to bring so many. The multi-purpose mallet, though, has helped me a lot, so I have to bring this with me. However, there was indeed no space, so Chen-gu tied to the mallet to the outside of the backpack. Including the black suitcase with various live stream equipment, the table before Chen-gu was full. It still feels like I'm missing something. Chen-gu thought about it, exited the staff break room, and entered the Muyang High School scenario. For this 3-star trial mission, he could not be too prepared. He entered the female dormitory and picked up the broken ballpoint pen. Pen Spirit, I want to use today's fortune-telling chance, please help me answer a question. Chen-gu started playing the Pen Spirit game. Will you tell me what kind of danger I will run into at the 3rd sick hall? The pen quivered lightly, and after a long time, the pen started writing. A certain death. As if to stress, the Pen Spirit used extra emphasis, and the pen almost tore through the paper. A certain death. Looking at Pen Spirit's answer, Chen Ji's face fell. Pen Spirit, I asked about the type of danger, why are you giving me this answer? Ahead of his departure, his confidence was already wavering. The Pen Spirit did not answer. Chen Ji's brows creased heavily. Hopefully you're wrong, or it's over for all of us. Then, he planned to shove the pen inside his pocket. After all, as a part of the haunted house, how could the Pen Spirit sit this one out? The Pen Spirit did not expect things would develop like this. Just as Chen Ji's arm was leaving the paper, it quickly scribbled the earlier answer out. There's still a fighting chance. Chen-gu was full of anticipation, but the Pen Spirit wrote another line down. Don't bring me with you. Don't bring you. Chen-gu pocketed the pen and waltzed out of Muyang High School. Everything is ready, it's time to go. Chen-gu took out the Black Phone. After completing 3 nightmare missions, he had the chance to unlock a trial mission. Congratulations, Spectres favored, you have unlocked the trial mission for the third sick hall. The third sick hall, 3 stars scream factor. This abandoned hospital makes strange noises at night, and you'll need to find out why. Mission venue, the quarantine sector of Jiujiang 3rd Psychological Convalescence Center. Mission requirement, arrive at the third sick hall before midnight and survive until dawn. Mission hint, the antonym of good is evil, and the antonym of right is wrong, so what is the antonym of human? Do you wish to accept this mission? Warning, trial missions are only available for 24 hours. If they are not accepted within these 24 hours, the scenario will never be unlocked. Chen Guo had made all the necessary preparations for this moment. He clicked on accept, and the interface changed. A clock appeared in the upper left-hand corner of the screen. If Chen Guo did not enter the third sick hall before midnight, the trial mission would be considered a fail. The third sick hall. After I finish this mission, I should be able to find more clues about my parents. Chen Guo left the park with all the bags and called Lu Dao. Lu Dao told Chen Guo to wait for him at the park, and he would personally fetch him. When Lu Dao saw Chen Guo, he also received quite a shock. However, the man very cleverly did not ask for more details. He started the car and drove Chen Guo to Jiujiang 3rd Psychological Convalescence Center. Qin Guang's live stream starts at 10 p.m. The response to his previous live stream was positive, so the platform gave him its full support again. We have tried our best and have sacrificed the posts of 2 hosts to gain a not-so-bad channel and recommendation for you. Please do your best tonight. At 7 p.m., after taking 2 wrong turns, Lu Dao and Chen Guo finally arrived at their destination. Come on, I'll introduce you to the other workers of our studio. Lu Dao parked the car and walked into the nearby brush. We're at the outskirt of the Jiujiang district, yes. Chen Guo inspected the content of his backpack before getting out from the car. The road was filled with holes from lack of maintenance, and there was a small mound of rocks in the way, like someone was purposely blocking up the road. The trees that lined the road were tall and lush, probably planted decades ago. The canopy blocked out the moonlight completely, and after entering the brush, it was as dark as night. Chen Guo turned on the flashlight and followed behind Lu Dao. They had been trekking for 10 minutes already, and they were still trapped among the trees. Brother, are we lost? Chen Guo looked around him, and there was no trace of any human activity. Don't fret, don't fret. Lu Dao made a call before turning down a small lane. This area is very complicated. There's nothing for us to refer to, so it's very easy to get lost. You're entering the mental hospital alone, so be careful. I advise you to mark some trees as you move toward the building. After a few more minutes of walking, Lu Dao and Chen Guo finally exited the brush. A large tent appeared before their eyes. This is the only open ground nearby and the place with the best signal. When they spotted Lu Dao, the people inside the tent walked over. Brother Lu, where have you been? You know we are lacking in manpower. Are you trying to work Sister Li and myself to our death? A young man who had a crew cut and the head the shape of a pot lid grumbled. He looked about 20 and was forward with his words. Why did we let him go fetch the person knowing he's horrible with directions? Sister Li asked. Her skin was rough, and she was more muscular than most men. To defuse the awkward situation, Lu Dao dragged Chen Guo over. This is the host who will be live streaming inside the third sick hall alone, Chen Guo. There's still some time before the live stream. You can teach him how to use the live streaming equipment and camera techniques. This is Chen Guo. Sister Li pushed Lu Dao aside and started studying Chen Guo alongside the team. When they saw Chen Ji's get up, there was a flash of confused shock in their eyes. Isn't he going to do a supernatural live stream? Why did he bring a chicken with him? They wanted to mock him, but since this was their first meeting, they held their tongues. I'm Zhang Pin, and this is Sister Li. We'll be responsible for helping you relay your live stream. The team led Chen Guo into the tent. There was plenty of equipment inside. He taught Chingu how to use it all and then had Chingu open the black suitcase. He explained each piece of equipment's usage one by one. Outside the tent, Sister Lee whispered, "Oh Lu, you sure this kid can work? We have sacrificed the slot of 2 hosts with 100,000 viewers to earn a level 2 platform recommendation. The platform is afraid of earning Qin Guang's ire and purposely making this difficult for us." Lu Dao lit a cigarette. The platform's recommendation could be delineated into 5 levels, 1 was the best, and 5 the worst. The highest they could wrangle for a newbie was a level 2. He only has a level 2 recommendation while Qin Guang has 3 level 1 recommendations and a featured ad on the front page. It's obvious who will lose. Sister Lee did not have confidence in Chingu, and that feeling only heightened after seeing Chingu in person. To be a famous host, one either had to have unnaturally good looks or immense charisma. Chingu seemed to have neither. He was just a normal guy, going about his life normally. He was not over the top but calm and collected. Compared to a host, he felt more like a doctor. You're only seeing his surface. If you chat with him, you'll realize this person has a unique charm to him. His understanding of fear is different than most. Lu Dao was reminded of his first interaction with Chingu. He was led throughout the conversation, and his mind screamed, "Crazy person alert." Later, he reflected on it and realized that it was because their thinking was not on the same level. It's not that I look down on him, but we have invested too much on him. Sister Lee sighed. Also, the fact that we've helped him gain a recommendation will definitely get Qin Guang to target us. Now that the platform is pushing Qin Guang as their featured host, when Qin Guang's power is solidified, it'll be hell for other hosts from our studio. Lu Dao hushed Sister Lee so that their conversation was not overheard. Have some faith in Chingu. To be honest, both of Qin Guang's previous live streams were copies, and this man before us is the real deal. But he has no script, props, or actors. This kind of dull live stream will get viewers. I'm not going to argue with you. In any case, do your work and make sure that there are no technical problems tonight. Lu Dao composed himself and entered the tent. He greeted Chingu and took out his laptop. He opened the bookmarked website and said, "Chingu, come and take a look at this." Chingu thought it was going to be a script, but it was actually a news article. Writing scripts will be easily exposed, and it'll seem fake, so we'll leave it to you how you want to go about the plot. Lu Dao pointed at the news. But here is some inspiration. These are 3 things that are most discussed online about the mental hospital. The first is the missing hospital director. His existence remains unconfirmed to this day, and no one knows whether he is still alive or dead. The second are the weird noises that reverberate through the buildings every midnight. The third is the appearance of the bloody words that seem to appear out of nowhere. Some people swore they have seen them appear at night, but as dawn arrived, the words disappeared. Focus on these 3 things, and the effect should be good. Chingu nodded. After reading the articles in detail, he had a better understanding of the mental hospital. Let's take a break for dinner first. Then we'll discuss some of the details. Sister Lee took out a few rice boxes from an insulated cabinet and passed them around. At 9:30 p.m., Lu Dao went out to make a call. When he returned, he told Chingu that it was time to start. Zhang Ping took out the equipment from the black suitcase, and Chingu was making his final preparations. He opened the bag, and with the crowd watching curiously, he snatched the jacket away from the cat and put it on. The jacket had the smell of the kitchen, so only by wearing this jacket would the white cat follow him into the mental hospital. The people from Lu Dao's studio were speechless because this was a question they had not faced in their life before. In the end, it was Lu Dao who walked over to say, "You have to be careful tonight. Safety first." We took a look around the mental hospital when the sun was still up. You've been inside the place. What did you find? The way Chingu focused on Lu Dao made him feel uncomfortable. We just took a stroll outside and didn't dare go in. But I've downloaded a map of the mental hospital for you. According to the rumors, it was drawn by one of its patients. Lu Dao opened a file on his laptop, and it showed a very rough map. There are 3 buildings inside the hospital, and they are interconnected. The first and second sick halls housed normal patients, and the entrance and windows faced the sun. The third sick hall is a bit more mysterious, it was the quarantine hall. It housed the more dangerous patients, and its door and windows faced away from the sun. You have to be exceptionally careful when you are inside this third hall. According to the description of the artist who drew the map, the third hall was forbidden for normal patients, and whenever a normal patient was discovered to be near the place, they would be given a horrible punishment. Therefore, I suggest you skip the third hall tonight. If you take it slow, the first 2 halls should provide us with enough content already. Lu Dao pushed the screen toward Chen Gu to make him memorize the map. Is this third sick hall that special? Did you manage to find more details about it online? Chen Ji's expression was serious. Not much, and some sounded made up. Some said that the patients in there had killed a doctor, and the incident was exposed only after a few days. Some even said that the place did not house normal humans but strange creatures. Lu Dao laughed. It has to be made up, right? Closing the laptop, everyone there noticed the change in Chen Ji's presence. He seemed to be greatly worried about something. Check the camera, we do not have much time left. Chen Gu carried his backpack and equipped the chest camera, wrist camera, and audio recorder. After testing all of them, he headed out of the tent. If it becomes too dangerous, just turn back and run. Remember to mark your way as you head toward the place and set my phone number as your emergency call, Lu Dao shouted from behind Chen Gu. I will call you 1 minute before the start of the live stream. You'll be able to see the situation inside your live stream room. Lastly, no one has been to that place in a long time, so I cannot guarantee what you'll find inside. Be careful. Chen Gu did not expect that the man would be so worried about him. He stopped at the entrance to the tent and set Lu Dao's phone as his emergency call before everyone. He waved and said, remember to stay inside the tent. Do not wander off, and don't come to find me no matter what you see or hear. Understand? But if. Take care of the equipment and leave the content to me. The man and the cat disappeared into the darkness. Watching Chen Gu walk away, Sister Li, who was dubious of him, had her arms crossed before her chest. She said under her breath, this kid, at least his back is kinda handsome. Chen Gu was more nervous than anyone before entering an actual 3-star scenario. He understood how dangerous this place was and knew how real those stories that Lu Dao thought were made up were. The patient did not make up those things, perhaps it was because he could see things that normal people could not, and that was why he was treated as a patient. Following the memorized map, Chen Gu reached the end of the brush, and an old building appeared before his eyes. This mental hospital occupies a large area. Initially, when Chen Gu heard it was a private hospital, he had thought that the environment would be horrid and would not be big enough to fit many patients, but when he was there in person, he realized how wrong he was. The hospital was surrounded by thick brush, and there was only one entrance. It was sealed, and thanks to the tall cement walls, Chen Gu temporarily could not see anything more than that. When he got close, Chen Gu noticed something that unsettled him. The hospital's cement walls were filled with many senseless sentences, but they shared a similarity, they all mentioned someone's name. When Chen Gu saw this for the first time, he tried to memorize the names, but there were simply too many sentences and too many names. Some even repeated, so in the end, he gave up. Are these names of the patients at the hospital? He could not understand the meaning of those sentences, but he did think that they are very weird. These sentences definitely weren't written by a normal person. What is it that they are trying to communicate? Looking at the walls, Chen Gu felt weirdly anxious, like the sentences were curses directed at him. White tiger, don't stray too far from me. Now that they were alone, Chen Gu did not feel that shameless about referring to the cat by that name. When they got close to the hospital, the white cat showed obvious hostility. This cat, which was sensitive to those things, had felt something. "Don't worry, we also have our trump cards." Chen Gu raised the chicken, which was tied by the claws, and took out the mallet. He did not rush in but waited patiently for Lu Dao's call. "The equipment is working well, the picture is clear and stable. We've started the live stream. You can check it out on your own phone." "Okay." Chen Gu logged into the platform, and the first thing he saw was the ad for Qin Guang's live stream. He clicked on it. Qin Guang and his team had a little accident outside of Muyang High School. It sounded like the equipment car had driven into a ditch. Qin Guang was making a personal apology on the live stream. He said that the driver saw something collapse on top of the windscreen, and he lost his focus. This bunch of people really did go to Muyang High School. Looks like he didn't heed my advice. Then again, even this apology video has about 400,000 views. He cannot be underestimated. Chen Gu then entered his own live stream room. Thanks to the platform's recommendation, the number of viewers had climbed up to 250,000 people in a short amount of time. The video was split into different screens. The largest one was the footage from his chest camera. It had the highest definition. There was a smaller video in the bottom left corner, which corresponded to the camera on his wrist. Like a watch, the angle could be monitored freely, and by raising his arm, he could see his own body on the video. "It's 10 p.m. Time to start." He pointed the camera on his wrist at himself and looked at the chat log that continued to roll. "I didn't expect that I'd be doing something so crazy tonight." After patting his backpack and helping the cat onto the wall, Chen Gu climbed over the wall into Zhejiang 3rd Psychological Convalescence Center. A mental hospital and normal hospital offer different kinds of treatment, and there is a bigger stigma toward the former. Normally, people unconsciously skirt around them, Chen Gu said to the camera. No one can refute that. After all, no matter the argument, the people who are treated here are different from us, but sometimes, it is hard to tell whether they are wrong or whether it is us who are not that normal. Chen Ji's started to focus when his feet landed on the ground. This hospital before me is the place where many horrific rumors took place. When the day went quiet, weird screams could be heard coming from the hospital. Words written in blood would appear on the walls of the corridors where no live people still tread. The director has disappeared without a trace, and some suspected he is still hiding in a dark corner of this hospital. Chen Gu glanced at the chat log, and most of the viewers did not buy what he said. Some even made a direct comparison of his live stream to Qin Guang's. Supernatural live stream, yet another actor trying to lie to us. Even through the screen, I can already tell your future. Some hosts are only mentioned such stories to survive in our memory. I can understand what you've said, but do you mind telling me why there is a chicken in your hand? Are you trying to combine a supernatural show with a cooking show? Is this some new direction? Visiting a mental hospital at night? Based on that, you got my like. The viewers were chatting and joking, there was a noticeable lack of fear. What is there to be afraid of? The last host who said that is now fixing his car. Wow! That is such a cute cat. This helped Chen Gu calm down. After chatting for a while longer with the viewers, he finally started exploring Zhejiang 3rd Psychological Convalescence Center. The mental hospital spanned a large area, and the whole hospital was surrounded by a cement wall. There was a large courtyard probably for the patients to move around in, but after years of neglect, other than the few patches of cement, the other places were overgrown with weeds that reached up to the knees. Chen Gu moved forward some more, and he finally saw the 3 buildings that were connected to each other. The buildings were arranged into the form of the character. The second building was the one that protruded to the north, and all the buildings were connected with hallways. The first and second sick halls faced the sun, and the one facing away from it should be the third sick hall. This is a weird design. Are there some patients that couldn't see the light in the third sick hall? From the layout of the place alone, this place gave him the creeps. There has to be a reason for this kind of design. Be it for the trial mission or to get the clues left behind by my parents, I'll need to enter the third sick hall tonight. Chengu walked forward, and the white cat followed behind him. The moon was full that night, and it colored the cement ground a milky white. Chengu took the steps that led him to the first sick hall. The entrance was made from steel. He tried to push it once, and it swung open easily. The lock is broken. The previous trial missions had given Chengu plenty of experience. He shone the light on the lock. The spring has snapped, it was a forced entry. Chengu looked down the dark corridor, and a question cropped up his mind. Who busted the lock? Someone had returned after the hospital closed. Was it the patients or his own parents? Director Luo had overheard his parents mention the third sick hall before they disappeared, and the note left in the park did also point to this place, but how was this place special? Chengu had no idea. Director Luo had heard them mention this place before they disappeared, while the bloody note only appeared after his parents' disappearance. What happened to them at the third sick hall? Chengu pushed open the steel door wide. The corridor was filled with trash and abandoned beds. It gave one a glimpse into the past. The place had been crowded when it was still in operation, and many patients could only rest in the corridors. Unlike certified hospitals, mental hospitals did not have that many specialized rooms. Along the crowded corridor were rooms of unknown usage. Chengu sniffed the air and could smell a stench in the air. This stench was familiar because he had once smelled it in Hai Ming apartments. It was similar to the stench that stuck to Wang Xinglong. The negative feeling is already so strong even before I enter the place. This was also Chen Ji's first visit to a mental hospital. The rough map drawn by the patient was his only guidance. The design of the 3 sick halls should be similar. The danger level of the first sick hall should be the lowest. I should familiarize myself with the surroundings first before moving forward. He only took one step when the white cat jumped onto his shoulder. It seemed to want to communicate something to Chengu, but Chengu could not understand what. This is the first time the cat has willing been so physically close to me. What has it sensed? Is this a sign of fear or something else entirely? As he walked down the hall, Chengu kept feeling like something was crunching underneath his footsteps. He lowered his head to look, and inside the cracked tiles were plenty of carcasses of unknown bugs. The hospital had not been used for a year, so it could not be the effect of bug spray. So what killed these bugs? All the doors to the room in the first sick hall were open, and the interior design in each room was almost identical. Other than some single beds in a cramped room, there was nothing else. Just how many patients did this hospital admit when it was still operating? Chengu walked into one of the random rooms to feel it out. 4 wooden beds filled up the already small room, and there was only a standing place left for Chengu to even turn around. Living in such a claustrophobic space day in and day out, even those who were normal would turn insane. Chengu exited the room and soon reached the first junction. There was a place that looked like the nurse's station. On top of the wooden counter, there were several empty pill bottles and cards with patients' names on. Looks like the patients would need to come here to get their medicine daily. Chengu looked into the station and found 2 things that should not have been there. There were 2 iron-welded cages inside the station. They were not big, just large enough to fit a medium-sized dog. What are these 2 cages for? Chengu jumped into the station, and when he shone the flashlight at the cages, he made a startling discovery. One of the cages had a half-cooked and half-feathered duck inside it. There's no sign of decay, which means that the duck was recently put inside the cage. Chengu gripped the mallet and leaned against the wall. There are people inside this hospital other than myself. After exposure to open air over a certain period of time, cooked meat would harden. Chengu aimed the camera on his chest on the duck as he reached out to touch it. The surface was tender, and it had some warmth to it. This duck was cooked less than an hour ago. He nudged his body as he pulled the duck out from the cage. The innards weren't properly cleaned, and the neck was snapped by brute force. The head is missing. Chen Gu examined the duck closely. There was a bite mark on the half-cooked meat, and the stomach had been torn open. There were no duck feathers on the floor, so it meant that the creature that tore the duck apart had eaten the feathers along with the meat. The iron cages are used to keep large dogs. Placing the duck back, Chen Gu looked at the other end of the cage. Placed outside the cage were two plastic bowls, and they were both filled with a colorless liquid. Why are there two bowls placed inside the cage? This cage houses two dogs. The bowls looked similar, and Chen Gu raised them to his nose to sniff. One of them had no smell. Chen Gu believed it was normal water. However, the liquid in the other bowl had a slightly pungent smell to it. Smells like rat poison. To prevent rats from munching on the set pieces, Chen Gu had purchased rat poison before, so he was familiar with the smell. Two similar bowls, one filled with water, another mixed with rat poison. Isn't the owner afraid that the pets might accidentally drink from the wrong bowl? The scene before him was indeed weird. Chen Gu captured everything with the camera. He glanced at his phone, and the chat box was updating fast. One of the comments flashed before his eyes. It mentioned in passing cage and page. Chen Gu did not have the time to climb the wall of text. He checked the iron rods of the cage and realized that the exit of the cage was dyed with a large splattering of paint, like someone had been gripping it tightly, unwilling to let go. Could it be that the cage is not for animals but humans? Empty pill bottles littered the abandoned nurse station, and there were little bags with patients' names written on them. Some of them still had weird-looking pills inside. Someone is living at this mental hospital that has been abandoned for 5 years, and there looks to be more than one person living here. Chen Gu became more careful. All the preparation he made was to deal with ghosts. He had not prepared to face dangerous occupants at the hospital. Chen Gu examined the walls on either side as he walked out from the nurse's station. The person in the iron cage was forcibly dragged away. Their hands were dirty with paint, so they had to have left some traces during the struggle. Chen Gu took a few steps and saw signs of the walls being clawed at, and the peeling paint was daubed with blood. Injured? Chen Gu followed the trail up to the second floor. There, the corridor spilt into two, one led further into the first sick hall while the other connected to the second sick hall. As mentioned earlier, the three buildings were interconnected. Chen Gu used 20 minutes to finish inspecting the first sick hall. There were not any hidden corners for people to hide in. He failed to find the person trapped in the cage and did not find any other evidence of people living there. Could the person have been dragged to the other sick hall? Chen Gu was walking down the stairs when his phone vibrated. It was a call from Lu Dao. Yes. Chen Gu was so tense that even the smallest interruption influenced him greatly. Chen Gu, you're moving too fast. We plan to live stream throughout the night, and you have finished exploring the first sick hall in just 20 minutes. What are you going to do for the rest of the night? Lu Dao had been following Chen Ji's live stream. Qin Guang's live stream has broken 600,000 viewers, and you're barely breaking 50,000 viewers. Don't just focus on the exploration, try to communicate with the viewers. Chen Gu listened to Lu Dao as he wandered back down to the first floor. When he looked down the first floor corridor, his pupils narrowed. Wait, who closed the entrance? I remember leaving it open when I came in. What did you say? Lu Dao paused. In any case, don't feel too much pressure. Be careful. Okay, I'll talk to you later. Chen Gu pocketed his phone and ran toward the entrance with his mallet raised. When he passed the nurse's station, he glanced into it out of habit. Something has changed. However, since he was worried about the front door, Chen Gu did not jump into the nurse's station. He ran to the door and shook it with all his might. It's locked. When did that happen? Chen-gu looked through the gap and saw that there was a new lock on the door outside. He slammed into the door, but it remained unmoved. The speedy change of the lock means that this is not the first time the culprit has done this. There were people living in the abandoned hospital, and Chen-gu believed that it was the patients who had returned. They were not mentally retarded. If anything, from a certain perspective, they were cleverer and more dangerous than normal people. Chen-gu could not underestimate them. He tried to pry the door open with the mallet, but it was to no avail. He walked into the rooms next to the front door, and the windows were sealed up with iron netting. At that moment, Chen-gu could understand the feeling of the patients who were sent into the mental hospital. This place felt like a giant jail. Ask for help. Call the cops. Chen-gu looked at the phone, and the viewership was still climbing. If he left down, this live stream would be over. Furthermore, he had the trial mission to complete. He had to survive inside the third sick hall until dawn. If he involved the police, that would also fail. I remember that there wasn't any netting on the second floor windows. That's an opening if I need to escape. Temporarily, there's no need to call the police. To complete this trial mission and find the clues to his missing parents, Chen-gu did not hold back. Returning to the nurse's station, Chen-gu finally realized what had changed. The plastic bowls outside of the iron cage had been toppled, and the liquid had splashed all over the floor. They're worried that I might discover one of them is poisoned. Chen-gu could not understand the meaning of this. When he was about to stand up, he noticed rows of small handwriting that was written under the wooden counter. To take a closer look, Chen-gu twisted around and leaned his head into the space under the counter. Before he got close enough, something touched the top of his head. It felt like little worms that were trying to burrow into his hair. Chen-gu reached out to touch it, and he felt something touch the back of his hand. He turned his head around, and his heart skipped a beat. Heavy strands of hair were taped to the bottom of the counter. Some were long, and some were short, but it was unclear where they came from. Why is there hair here? Did it belong to the person inside the cage? Suddenly, a cat's shrill purr could be heard from outside the nurse's station, and Chen-gu immediately crawled out from under the counter and looked out. The white cat was gnashing its teeth at the stairwell that led up to the second floor, its multicolored eyes staring in a particular direction. Who's there? Chen-gu rushed down the corridor without a second thought with the mallet raised. He did not want to give the other party the chance to react. Come out. The front door was already locked, so his trail had been exposed. He had nothing else to lose. The man and the cat ran to the corner of the stairwell, but it was complete darkness up the stairs. There was nothing there. Where has it disappeared to? Chen-gu had tested the white cat at the haunted house. It was sensitive to those things and had never made a mistake. The white cat didn't go berserk but only showed aggression, so that thing's danger level should be lowered than Muyang High School. The white cat had acted up twice inside Chen-ji's haunted house. The first was when it was inside Muyang High School scenario, and the other was when the blood door appeared in the toilet. According to the cat's reaction, Chen-gu made a gauge of the danger threat. But the key issue is, I have no idea whether that thing was human or ghost. Returning to the nurse's station, Chen-gu demolished the counter with the mallet and pried the whole counterboard out. The thing that he saw was rather scary. Strands of hair that were tied together by string were nailed to the wooden board. Why would someone nail hair to a wooden board? What is the meaning of this? All the strands were neatly tied up with string. One was soft, dark, and luscious. It probably belonged to a young woman who took care of her hair. The other was rough, white, and had split ends. It probably belonged to an elder. Chen-gu deduced that there were hair samples from 4 different individuals after comparing their color, quality, and length. Of these 4 people, at least one of them has to be alive. Chen-gu looked at the 2 large iron cages, and their uses slowly came to him. I'm dealing with actual crazies. He placed the wooden board aside and squatted down again. This time, He got a better view of the handwriting on the wall. "I will repay everything that you have done to me." The handwriting was small, and there were other senseless sentences. It felt like the person was interrupted mid-sentence and started to write nonsense. When some patients act up, they mumble something incoherent to the air, quite similar to how normal people would talk in their sleep. Chen-gu tried to make sense of those words, but they were incomprehensible. Reading the words sent a chill up his spine. They reminded him of the sentences written on the outer walls of the mental hospital. There was a mention of a name in each sentence, and they came from different handwriting, meaning they were probably written by different people. It was understandable if a few patients acted like this, but to have the whole hospital act this way. Chen-gu jumped out of the station and took out a pack of salt from his bag. He tore open a small opening and left a line of salt around the nurse's station. This was not to prevent bad luck but to lay a trap for the hidden madman. With salt in his hand, Chen-gu walked to the hallway that connected the first and second sick hall. When he was about to enter the second sick hall, the white cat suddenly jumped onto the window and scratched on the glass. "Careful, you're going to fall down." Chen-gu stood beside the window. The hospital was surrounded by a thick brush, and there was light in sight. Who would have thought that such a building existed in the middle of nowhere? Chen-gu did not notice anything weird, but the white cat refused to leave the window. It kept its head raised and kept meowing. "Something wrong with the window? Above us?" Chen-gu opened the window and looked up. Just above him, at the window of the third floor, a twisted face was looking down at him. Facing away from the light, when the person heard the sound of Chen-ji's window opening, he leaned back quickly and disappeared without even closing the window. That face, Chen-gu also did not expect the enemy to suddenly appear above him. They had shared a look that was less than 0.1 seconds. He definitely did not get a good enough look, but he knew the face looked weird, different from normal, but he could not pinpoint what was weird about it. Chen-gu stopped and focused on his hearing. He did not hear any footsteps, so he knew the person had not run in a certain direction. "I have a feeling that face is perhaps uneven on both sides, but it should be a person." Chen-gu entered the second sick hall. He had thought that the first and second sick hall were going to be the same, but when he entered the second sick hall, he realized that the layout was completely different. The second sick hall was larger and emptier than the first. There were no crowded beds, and between individual rooms, there were chairs, tables, and table lamps. The environment here is definitely better than the first sick hall. Chen-gu dumped a handful of salt near the staircase before entering the first room that was closest to him. The mattress was torn open, and its innards were littered all over the place. The chamber pot was placed next to the eating utensils, and there were plenty of characters gouged out with fingernails left on the wall. It mustn't have been easy for the doctors and nurses to take care of patients like this daily. Chen-gu exited the room and continued to move forward. The room types in the second sick hall were more varied than the first. There were specialized quarantine rooms, entertainment rooms, chess rooms, and shower rooms, and there was even a small hall with a stage at the end of the corridor, but the decoration inside was rather weird. The hall was not used to host parties or balls. The windows were sealed shut and draped with extra thick curtains. All the decorations were either black or white, creating a weird style. Opening the door, before even stepping in, Chen-gu noticed the large black and white picture placed on the middle of the stage. The picture was hanging on the wall, and it was sliced in half by an unknown culprit. However, from the remaining half, one could see that it was a middle-aged female nurse. She was of a large frame and had a scowl on her face. An enlarged black and white picture, thick curtains, rows of wooden chairs. Why is this place decorated like a morning hall? Chen-gu could not understand why such an event would occur at a mental hospital, and if the event was hosted by the hospital, what was the meaning of it? Could this female nurse have been a victim of the third sick hall? But if that's the case, why is her picture in the hall of the second sick hall? Chen-gu did not stop after memorizing the face of the female nurse. He closed the door, left a line of salt at the door, and ran up the stairs to the third floor. There was a stench in the air, and the closer Chin-guk got to the third sick hall, the more obvious the stench became. The hallway between the second and third sick hall was locked. A steel door separated the two sick halls. Through the small gap in the door, Chin-guk could sort of see into the third sick hall. The tables and chairs were overturned, and a mess of mattresses littered the hallway. They were bloated up like they were covering something underneath. Chin-guk stood beside the rusted steel door with his eyes locked on the keyhole. A double-sided lock. Most mental hospitals used double-sided locks. In an emergency, the door could be locked from either side to prevent entry to seal up an entire area. This was something inconspicuous, but it had garnered Chin Ji's attention. He took out the key left behind by Wang Haiming from his pocket and tried it with the lock. Due to a lack of maintenance, the lock was rusted shut, and the key could barely fit. I knew it would be extremely lucky if it fitted. After comparing the keyhole and the height of the key as well as the teeth, Chin-guk pocketed the key again. When he entered the hospital, he noticed that most rooms had single-sided lock, and their keyholes were small, too small for the key to fit in. Wang Haiming brought the key out from the third sick hall, so the lock it fits should be inside the third sick hall as well. If I dare make a speculation, there are 9 patients living in the third sick hall that has 10 rooms, so could the missing patient from room 3 be Wang Haiming? Chin-guk could not confirm his speculation. Then again, Dr. Gao had searched through all the records, and there was nothing on room 3. Just a Wang Haiming shouldn't be enough for the hospital to delete all the records. The mystery at this hospital was deep. Chin-guk was not interested in what happened here 5 years ago, he merely wanted to find the clue left behind by his parents and the way to close the door. Chin-guk held the flashlight in his hands as he entered the third-floor corridor. He walked past the rooms carefully. Could the person I saw earlier be hiding in one of these rooms? At the end of the long corridor, Chin-guk stopped at the door to a room with an unknown purpose. A heavy scent of mildew drifted out from behind the door, and the door looked different from other normal sickbays. There was also a brand new lock that hung on the door. There is no rust on the lock. Similar to the lock that appeared on the first sick hall's front door, this is new. Chin-guk tried Wang Haiming's key, and it still did not fit. He turned back to look down the dark corridor. After making sure there was no one around, he raised the mallet and slammed it at the door. Thankfully, it's a wooden door. I wouldn't be able to get in if it was a steel door. As the door fell away, a heavy smell of mildew hit Chin-guk. The room was stuffed with patients' clothing and mattresses that formed a small hill. This appears to be the laundry room for the second sick hall. Chin-guk straightened up, and the camera on his chest recorded everything, including the words that left his lips. Due to the dangerous environment, he did not dare let his guard down to chat with the viewers. All he could do was vocalize everything he was thinking and seeing like a real-life supernatural documentary. The smell of mildew overwhelmed the stench that lingered at the sick hall itself. It made Chin-guk feel sticky and uncomfortable. Suppressing the discomfort, Chin-guk walked into the room. The room was large. There were several laundry machines and special antibacterial machines lined up by the wall. Other than that, the room was occupied by dirty laundry and old mattresses. This room looks normal, so why is it locked? Chin-guk focused his attention on the mountain of dirty laundry. Holding his breath as much as he could, he used the mallet to move the layers of cloth aside. I have a feeling something is hiding underneath here. Chin-guk increased his pace, and as he peeled off the stained clothes, the mallet hit something hard, and it created a metallic clink. An iron cage? He moved the layer of mattress aside, and the sight that appeared caused his heart to skip a beat. There was a young woman whose head was shaved trapped inside an iron cage. Her mouth was gagged with a dirty pillowcase, and her hands were tied to the cage. Her mental condition was unstable, and she kept shaking her head at Chin-guk, waving her tied hands as her legs kicked outwards at the cage. Chen Gu was stunned. He definitely did not expect to find a living person under the mountain of dirty laundry. The live stream exploded, and the chat log went berserk. In fact, there were so many comments that the live stream itself had lagged. Chen Gu took a quiet step back. Even then, he was calm. He closed the door and moved a laundry machine to block the door. He was afraid of being assaulted from behind. It was only after he blocked the door that he dared move close to the iron cage. Can you understand me? When Chen Gu neared the cage, the woman started to resist. There was no way to communicate with her. There are no wounds on her body and no oil stains on her lips. This woman isn't the person who was moved from the first sick hall. Perhaps there are some other people here. Chen Gu rummaged through the other laundry, and the horrible stench hit 3 iron cages. The iron cages were arranged in the form of the character, similar to how the 3 buildings at the mental hospital were arranged. The woman was placed in the middle, and to the left of her was an old man about 70. He was incredibly thin, and there were oily stains on his lips and fingers. To the right of the woman was a pale middle-aged man who appeared like he had not seen the sun for a long time. This man was the only one who looked at Chen Gu. His gaze was complicated, and it was filled with a mixture of excitement, disgust, and fear. 3 victims. Things were greatly out of Chen Ji's expectations. A thought appeared in his mind. He gripped the mallet and retreated to a safe distance from the 3 iron cages. When one came across strangers in a dangerous situation, the safest method was to not believe what they said and try to not get too close to them because the real murderer might be hiding among them. Chen Gu walked around them. The cages were small, they were definitely not designed for humans. With a living person, they could not even turn their body inside the cage. 3 cages, but only the woman is gagged and tied up. More questions surfaced. If they were all victims, why was only the woman, the weakest of them, apprehended in such a manner? The old man had a blank expression, and the middle-aged man had a changing expression. Their limbs were not tied, but they also did not ask for help. They just sat quietly in the iron cages, looking at Chen Gu. Comparing the explosive live stream, Chen Gu was calm. He stood before the 3 cages and asked, "How long have you been kept here?" Hearing Chen Ji's question, the 3 people in the cage had different reactions. The old man kept licking his fingers silently like he was trying to recollect the pleasant taste of the food he had just eaten, whereas the young woman widened her eyes and struggled in the cage like a fish out of water. The middle-aged man had the most unusual reaction. He was the only one out of the 3 who kept his eyes on Chen Gu. Why are these 3 people kept at the mental hospital? Chen Gu walked to the old man's cage first. Inside the cage sat 2 plastic bowls. The old man realized that someone had gotten close to him, but he did not show any sign of fear. He sat in the middle of the cage and continued to suck on the oil stains on his finger. The person who was transferred from the first sick hall is him. Try as he might, Chen Gu could not see anything particularly special about the old man. His hair is growing unevenly. Someone has recently shaved him, and this clump of hair should be new. Seeing that, Chen Gu was reminded of the hairs that were nailed to the nurse's station. One of the strands had white hairs mixed in black hairs, they likely belonged to this old man before him. His hair is so long even after a shave. Looks like he has been trapped here for a long time already. When Chen Gu was comparing the hair samples, he had decided that they came from 4 different people, but there were only 3 before him. One is still missing. Chen Ji's eyes scanned the young woman before stopping on the middle-aged man. His hair was long and unkempt. This person's head doesn't seem to have been shaved before. Chen Gu became more careful. Shaving seemed to be the killer's weird habit. Perhaps it was a way of toying with his victim, but why would he let the middle-aged man be? Did the man know the killer, or was he the killer? Chen Gu was shocked by his thought. In the hallway that connected the first and second sick hall, Chen Gu had caught a glimpse of an unfamiliar face. It had been an uneven face, a face that was twisted. To be able to walk around the sick halls freely and follow Chingu, the twisted face should have been the killer, but there was now this suspicious, middle-aged man. It was possible that there was more than one crazed killer who liked to trap their victims. Chingu gripped the mallet, and a worse scenario appeared in his mind. What if everyone in this mental hospital, other than me, is a killer? Of course, the chance of that was low. He paused to think before stopping to look at the young man. Both of the men showed no sign of answering him, so Chingu tried to remove the gag from the young woman's mouth, hoping to get some information from her. "Don't worry, I'm here to save you." Chingu tried the lock on the iron cage. Without a key, with just the mallet, he would need to work for who knew how long before he could release the three people. The young woman seemed to have a natural fear toward living people. The moment Chingu got close, she started to mumble, shake her head and hands. "Stay calm, I'm not going to hurt you." Chingu walked to stop before the young woman. When he was about to remove the gag from her, the middle-aged man, who had remained silent throughout, suddenly spoke. "I advise you to keep her gag on, she is very noisy." Turning around, Chingu was greeted with a pair of dark and fully guarded eyes. It was unknown whether the middle-aged man treated everyone like this or just Chingu. There was a natural disgust that radiated off the man, like the things Chingu was doing heavily repulsed him. "She is very noisy." Chingu was not afraid of talking to them. What he was afraid of was their refusal to communicate. As long as these people were willing to talk to him, he had a chance of getting useful information from them. "Yes, very noisy," the middle-aged man answered succinctly. He seemed to think that communication was something disgusting as well. "Can you tell me why? Was she traumatized in some way?" Chingu asked 2 consecutive questions, but there was no answer from the middle-aged man. It was not until Chingu reached his hand into the cage to remove the woman's gag that the middle-aged man said, "Don't know." "Then, what do you know? Since you don't know this woman, do you know the old man in the first cage?" Chingu asked the question that was on his mind. "Why does his cage have 2 plastic bowls but yours and the young woman's only have 1? "I can tell you, but in return, I hope that you won't remove the gag from that woman, she is very noisy." The middle-aged kept repeating that, and Chingu was curious why. In any case, he agreed to the trade, at least on the surface. "Okay, but only on the condition that you do not lie to me." "I never lie." The man sat in the cage and began the story in a gravelly voice. "The old man's body is bad, but his temper is very worse. After his wife left, he was left at home alone, and his life depended on his son. His son was a doctor, and even though his salary was not high, it was enough to keep 2 people afloat. However, who knew what got into the old man's head because he found himself a widow and remarried? His son did not protest. He moved out and continued to mail his father money every month. Unfortunately, bad things happen to the best of us. According to rumors, extended exposure to mental patients turned the son, who was a psychiatrist, insane, and he ended up injuring a few of his patients. The son lost his job, and his victims' families pressed to sue until the son's family had lost everything. The son needed money for treatment, and the payment for government mental hospital was 4,000 a month. This was an amount that he did not have. When he had no one to turn to, the hospital where the son once worked at came to the rescue. With a price that was much lower than the government hospital, they accepted the son as one of their patients. The once doctor was now the patient. This pushed the son even further over the edge, and until the hospital was closed, he remained an untreated patient. During the period the son was hospitalized, the old man's body continued to deteriorate. He was too old to go work, and the government stipend was all spent on his son's medical fees. Eventually, the new wife divorced him. He complained to his son, who was now home because the mental hospital had closed down. He hoped that his son would turn his life around and fight the mental sickness. Unfortunately, not long after that, his son was reported to have bitten someone from the same village. Once he acted up, the sun would turn highly destructive. With no option, the old man built an iron cage and locked his son within. This continued for some time until even the old man himself fell ill. He could barely feed himself, much less seek treatment for himself or his son. Looking at his son inside the cage, who had gotten worse with time, he came to a decision. He waited until his son was acting crazy and placed 2 bowls outside of the cage. One was filled with clean water and the other mixed with rat poison. He was going to let his own son decide whether to live or to die. The middle-aged man's expression did not change when he told the story, but his face turned paler, like the speech had drained him. This is why there are 2 bowls of water inside the old man's cage. After listening to the story, Chungu was reminded of that sentence he saw at the nurse's station: "I will repay everything that you have done to me." He is taking revenge, with a specific plan and target in mind. Chungu thought of many things in that moment. The middle-aged man's story had revealed a lot of information, and it matched the clues that Chungu had kept in his mind. The story fitted perfectly one of the patients who had been locked up in the 3rd sick hall. The once doctor who turned into a patient after witnessing too many tragedies. Similar to the main character of the middle-aged man's story, he was highly destructive. Standing where he was, a name floated up Chinji's mind: Xiong Qing. This was patient number 8. He suffered from hemineglect and was quarantined for treatment. He was diagnosed to be highly dangerous. Since Xiong Qing was once a psychiatrist, he had an intelligence that was higher than most, so the things that he did when he was crazy were also different from most. Could he be the killer hiding in the mental hospital? This person was familiar with the layout of the hospital since he was both a patient and a doctor. He was fully capable of doing these things. The opponent has the geographical advantage, so this is going to be hard. Xiong Qing was a dangerous person. Hemi-neglect itself was not dangerous, but to impose those perceived flawed perfections on others made Xiong Qing extremely dangerous. In his mind, everything was wrong and twisted. Even if a perfect man was standing before him, he needed to snap half the limbs off before he felt things were right. Most patients with hemi-neglect knew about their condition and would try their best to fix their flawed perception, but Xiong Qing was different. He wanted to change others to fit into his flawed understanding of perfection. If someone had lost a limb or 2, while trapped inside this mental hospital, it definitely was the end for them. Chungu had found the hair of 4 people, but he had only found 3 living individuals. The missing 4th was probably dead. Before midnight, and even before entering the 3rd sick hall, there are already so many problems to deal with. It'll be difficult tonight. The difficulty of the 3-star trial mission overshot murder by midnight and Muyang High School easily. One false step, and Chungu could lose his life. One of the killers had been confirmed, but Chungu had not seen Xiong Qing in person. He had no idea whether the man with the twisted face was Xiong Qing or the middle-aged man trapped in the cage was Xiong Qing. He was familiar with the old man's past, so the possibility of him being Xiong Qing was high. Squatting down before the old man's cage, Chungu examined the lock. The locks on the 3 cages were similar. Even if the middle-aged man had hidden the key, with Chungu watching closely, he would not be able to ambush Chungu. Toying with the mallet, Chungu looked the middle-aged man in his eyes. After some thought, he decided to ask the question outright: "How are you so familiar with the old man's life story? Could it be that you are his son?" "Me?" The middle-aged man could hear the suspicion in Chinji's voice, but he answered with something very weird. "I knew you'd never believe me. All of you never trust me, just like how I don't trust all of you. Please leave me be. I've hidden myself here, so how did all of you manage to find me? Stop monitoring my life. Don't trust all of us. Monitoring your life? What are you talking about?" Chungu had a hard time following. "Whenever I exposed you, you all gave me this innocent look. This is why I am disgusted with all of you. You have been exposed, so why do you insist on lying to me? The middle-aged man remained very calmly as he made this series of claims that Chen Gu could not understand. I wonder, should I refer to you as Wang Xian? Or Su Fei? Li Cheng? Ma Yong? Or have you changed to a new name? What are you talking about? Chen Gu tried to get the man to calm down, but it only had the opposite effect. Next, you're going to say that you don't know any of these people, including me, right? But I really don't know any of you. Stop lying. All of you are one single person in disguise. Your fake smile disgusts me. Stop this pointless game. One single person in disguise. When Chen Gu heard the man say that, he was reminded of another patient given to him by Dr. Gao. Patient number 5 was called Su Tong. He suffered from Fregeli delusion syndrome. He thought that everyone around him was the same person in disguise, and he was living in a made-up world. This middle-aged man's reaction was similar to patient number 5. He could communicate normally, but the moment Chen Gu showed some suspicion, his latent disease started to act up. This was the first time Chen Gu had dealt with a seriously mentally ill person. He was fine one moment but completely incoherent the next. Looking at the man inside the cage, another question bubbled up in his heart: why did all the patients of Third Sick Hall return to this place? Is something attracting them here? Or are they all controlled by ghosts and have to return? The easiest way to find out was to ask the middle-aged man directly, but his current state was not conducive for communication. Chen Gu had no choice but to turn back to the young woman. Noticing his approach, the woman kicked the iron rods and tried to get as far away from Chen Gu as she could. Chen Gu shone his flashlight on the woman's face. She looked about 20 and had average looks, definitely not fitting the descriptions of the 2 female patients in the Third Sick Hall. This girl's and the old man's heads were both shaved. They should be the real victims. Chen Gu still could not understand why the culprit wanted to shave people's hair. If it was revenge, then something similar probably happened to the culprit once. Relax. Chen Gu reached his hand into the iron cage. The girl evaded him with all her life. After 3 minutes, she tired herself out from the struggle and finally surrendered. I don't intend to harm you, believe me. Chen Gu pulled on the pillowcase in the girl's mouth and yanked it out. The moment the gag was released, the girl screamed at Chen Gu crazily, hand. 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 What? The woman was loud and shrill. Chen Gu did not know what she had been through to react in such a manner. Hearing the girl's voice, the dazed old man suddenly collapsed to the ground and played dead. The middle-aged man also stopped acting crazy. He looked at the door with extreme focus, his eyes filled with terror. Hand. Hand. The girl continued to scream, so Chen Gu had no choice but to insert the gag back into her mouth. She is also crazy. There is not one normal individual at the mental hospital, and that unsettled Chen Gu. After stuffing the girl's mouth, the old man and the middle-aged man returned to normal. They seemed to be extremely sensitive to the term hand. The term opened some kind of memory in their minds, and it brought out their darkest and scariest memory. Why are they afraid of hand? Chen Gu looked around the room and found nothing related to a hand. He looked at the 3 people, and there were no obvious wounds on their bodies, so the fear was probably psychological. Just what is it that has scarred them so? Chen Ji's brain turned, and he landed on a possibility. In the information provided by Dr. Gao, patient number 4 lost his hand due to an accident, and he was diagnosed with phantom limb syndrome after that, thinking his arm was still there. The patient had no name. Perhaps Dr. Gao had forgotten about it or the name had been purposely removed. In my memory, only this person can be said to be related to a hand. Phantom limb syndrome was not a scary disease, and it was not even considered a serious psychological problem. It was definitely treatable through medication and counseling. Chen Gu was familiar with this information, so the thing that scared him was why would a patient with a seemingly harmless phantom limb syndrome be kept at the Third Sick Hall? What had he done to make the hospital think that he was a dangerous threat? Chen-gu walked to the girl. The middle-aged man refused to communicate, and the old man seemed to be retarded, so his only opening was the young woman. He squatted down beside the iron cage and looked the girl in her eyes. Since he could not communicate with her normally, he was going to try something else. With a voice he was sure the woman could hear, he asked, "Did you see many hands?" The girl did not react in any way but shrunk further from Chen-gu. "Did you see a man with only one hand?" Before he even finished, the girl in the cage started to shake her head vehemently, her head banging continuously on the iron cage. The girl's weird reaction answered many things. The thing that gave her the nightmare was probably the person with only one hand. Staring at the girl's face, Chen-gu paid attention to the smallest twitch of emotion on her face. That man was carrying a weapon. Her eyes widened, and veins popped on her forehead. What was he carrying? Saw? Knife? Or axe? The woman's mouth was gagged. She was agitated but could not make a sound. "Looks like it was one of those things, but what would he have done to you?" Chen Ji's voice dropped. "Chop. Saw. Did he say you are creatures of imperfections, so he wanted to fix you? Or did he want to borrow your arm? The number of victims is dwindling, so you should have been around when they were correcting the patients. You are the witness, and you have seen everything, yes?" The woman's face was twisted with popping veins, and tears flowed down her face. She continued to shake her head like she was saying that she did not see anything. "You really don't know anything? Then, why are you so afraid of that hand? Did the hand fall beside you, or did it once capture you when you were trying to escape?" From Chen Ji's perspective, even though the woman was beyond traumatized, the scary memory was also etched in her mind. Running away from fear was a human's natural instinct, so when he mentioned something scary to the woman, her body would react to it instinctively, and the truth could be deduced from her expression and actions. A person's natural instincts would not lie. Chen-gu had confirmed part of his suspicion from the woman's reaction. "Don't be afraid. If you're really innocent, I will save you. I came here tonight to uncover everything and make sure all these crazy people get punished by the law." The smell of mildew was heavy in the laundry room. Chen-gu stayed beside the woman for some time. It was unclear whether the woman understood her or not, but she did start to calm down. He reached into the cage once more and slowly pulled out the pillowcase. Cowering inside the cage, the woman's face was etched in terror. Her lips fell open, and she kept repeating that word. Hand. Just what kind of sick experience happened to her to scar her this way? Chen-gu dropped the pillowcase aside when he felt a push on the laundry room's door behind him. The force was small, like the person planned to sneak in but did not expect there to be a laundry machine blocking the door. The laundry room is at the deepest end of the corridor. The rooms nearby are all locked and sealed, so it couldn't be the wind. Chen-gu picked up the pillowcase and gagged the woman again. He then turned to look at the white cat submerged in the pile of dirty clothes. Perhaps the heavy mist of mildew had ruined its sense of smell, but it did not give Chen-gu a warning this time. "Looks like I'll need to depend on myself. I have to be more careful." Chen-gu grabbed the mallet and focused on the door. Under his gaze, a hand reached into the room through the gap. The gap was small, and the person could only poke in several fingers. He was probably trying to see whether the lock was still working or not. The real culprit has arrived. Chen Ji's growth after 2 trial missions was obvious. He did not panic but slowly opened his backpack zipper. He took out the scary-looking Dr. Skullcracker's hammer, removed the camera from his wrist, placed it on the counter facing the door. The camera corresponded to the small window in the left corner of his live stream room. By placing the camera pointed at the door, he could see what was happening at the door via his phone. After preparing, Chen-gu placed his backpack beside his leg, gripped the hammer, and hid in the corner beside the door. Not long after that, the laundry room's door was pushed again. The person outside the door seemed to have lost their patience, and after a few attempts, they slammed heavily on the door. The washing machine was toppled over, and the door fell open. Through his phone, Chen Gu could see two people standing outside the door. One of them had a twisted face and was holding an axe with red stains on it. The other only had one arm and was holding an iron shovel. Neither of them noticed the small camera that was pointed at them. The single-armed man nodded at the twisted face, and he moved toward the door cautiously. Before his body even got over the threshold, the tip of his shoe had just stepped into the room when he heard the sound of rushing wind beside his ear. Chen Gu swung the hammer directly at the door when the single-armed man showed intention of entering the room. The timing was perfect. When the man realized what was happening, the hammer was already close to making contact with his chest. The scary-looking hammer seemed to enlarge before his eyes. He used his remaining arm to block his chest, and with a speed several times faster than the speed he used to enter the room, he was sent flying out of it. The single-armed man landed on his butt, and his arm lay weakly by his side. One-on-one is much fairer. Chen Gu turned to the twisted face with the iron hammer. This person was wearing the doctor's coat, and there were signs of skin grafting on his face, causing it to look twisted. Without preamble, Chen Ji's first reaction after seeing the twisted face was to hold the hammer and swing it at the man's shoulder. The climax that night was the third sick hall. Before entering that place, Chen Gu wanted to eliminate as many dangerous threats as he could. Technically, this was the first time that they had met, and the twisted face did not expect Chen Gu to be so cruel and enraged. Such aggression scared even the real crazies. Twisted Face took a step back and turned to run down the corridor. The single-armed man moved even faster. He had gotten used to life with just one arm, so his lower body was extremely powerful. He stood up with just a simple roll. Without turning back, he ran even faster than the Twisted Face. The two did not even to resist and chose to escape with their lives. This came as quite a surprise to Chen Gu. However, he recovered quickly and made chase with the Dr. Skullcracker's hammer. The rushed footsteps shattered the quietness of the night. The victim, trapped inside the mental hospital, was chasing after the two culprits, wielding a hammer. The chase was so intense that they barely had time to talk. Chen Gu followed them from the third floor to the first floor. The two patients were familiar with the layout of the hospital, and they jumped into a secluded staircase. Chen Gu made to follow, and the three ran up from the first floor to the fourth floor. After some back and forth, when they passed the third-floor corridor, the two patients separated. Their splitting up, Chen Gu did not expect the two to strategize against him, but he made the decision easily. I have incapacitated the single-armed man's only arm, so he is much less dangerous than the Twisted Face. He should be my target. If I can incapacitate him, it'll be much safer for me to enter the third sick hall. Chen Ji's mind was clear, but when he gave chase after the Twisted Face, the single-armed man stopped running and turned back around to block Chen Gu. Twisted Face made use of this opening to run back to the fourth floor. He headed for the hallway that connected the buildings. The hallway connecting the second and third sick halls are equipped with security doors. The second floors was disabled from rust, and I haven't checked the third floors. Does this mean the fourth floors can be used normally? Facing the single-armed man who was rushing at him, Chen Ji's reaction was straightforward. He aimed the hammer at the man's legs. With just a few seconds, he managed to shake the man loose and turned to run toward the fourth floor. The Twisted Face's eyes were twitching as he raced down the corridor. This was the first time he had come across such aggressive prey. Twisted Face shoved open the steel door that connected the second and third sick hall, and he escaped into the third sick hall. Looking at the Twisted Face that disappeared into the darkness, Chen Gu did not continue to chase. The dark corridor was like the maw of a monster, it gave him a very uncomfortable feeling, and the stench in the air thickened. The third sick hall, Chen Gu stopped at the corridor. He inspected the steel door that separated the corridor. The lock had been sawed off. If these people have a saw with them, things will be horrendous if I'm captured. Chen-go was feeling rather tired after the chase that lasted for more than 10 minutes. He dropped a line of salt near the steel door as a mark. After returning to the second sick hall, Chen-go dragged the totally incapacitated man to the laundry room. The appearance of the man caused a change in the three people inside the cages. The one with the strongest reaction was still the woman in the middle. Her body knocked into the edges of the cage like she was trying to get away from this place. What have you done that shocked a normal person until she lost her mind? Chen-go had no sympathy for the twisted face and the single-armed man. This was one of the main reasons. These two were involved in some sick activities. The single-armed man was lying on the floor unconscious, and Chen-go realized something. When he whacked the man's arm and legs, he had not made a sound. Can this man not feel pain? Chen-go was not crazy enough to test that theory. He grabbed some dirty laundry and tied the man to the hose that ran down the corner of the room. After doing that, Chen-go picked up the camera that had fallen to the floor and reattached it to his wrist. Now that I have the upper hand, it's time to enter the third sick hall. Chen-go glanced at the live stream. He was shocked to see the viewership had reached over 80,000, and it was still climbing. It was probably due to the action-packed scenes earlier. The popularity of Chen Ji's live stream had easily surpassed others. My live stream should be more interesting than Qin Guang's. If this continues, I'll be able to grab some viewers from him. Chen-go glanced at the chat log. The popularity was high, but the chat log was slowly going out of control. He had people hiding under dirty laundry, smashing a single-armed man's chest, and running crazily in a mental hospital with a large hammer for 10 minutes. This was unheard of in the live streaming world, and his live stream was close to exploding. Some praised Chen-go for his hardworking nature and attention to detail, others mocked him for the exaggeration. There was also a small group of morally upright viewers who wanted to call the police when they saw the people trapped inside the steel cages. Chen-go did not expect the viewers' reactions to be so exciting. He was thankful that he did not give a detailed live stream address, and he only mentioned that he was at a mental hospital shrouded in mystery. 80,000 people was a high viewer count, but compared to the number of national citizens, it was like a drop of water in the ocean. Even if there were a handful of Zhejiang locals, they might not have heard of Zhejiang Third Psychological Convalescence Center. After all, this place had been abandoned for years. Without an address, it was difficult to get a police response. Even if the viewers managed to locate Chen-go through the clues on his live stream, it would be after midnight already. Hiding the scary-looking hammer behind him, Chen-go chatted for a little while with the camera to calm the viewers down. He tried to move the conversation toward good acting and a well-written script. In all honesty, it was hard for Chen-go. All other hosts were afraid that their script might be exposed, so they paid good money to design original scripts and hire actors to create shocks and scares. But for Chen-go, the development was so real that even he himself was scared. The scary surprises had not stopped, and each one was bigger than the one preceding it. The surprises Chen-go gave the viewers were indeed too huge and too much. He looked at the popularity ranking. Qin Guang was number 1. When he started the live stream, he was at 96, and now he was 19. This popularity ranking sat in the middle of the app's front page, so those who managed to squeeze into the top 20 were big hosts with more than 400,000 followers and fans. The rocket-esque rise in fame attracted the attention of many viewers. They were confused. How could a newbie with fewer than 50,000 followers enter the arena meant for the most popular hosts? To be honest, Chen-go had no answer. He was merely playing the role of an innocent victim. He did not violate the law, it was all in self-defense. Looks like my viewers are clever people. Under the corruption of money, a host like myself who pays such close attention to authentic content is a rare species. After inspecting the cameras on his chest and wrist, Chen-go pocketed the phone and returned to the woman. When he dragged the man into the room, the woman had gone crazy. She had knocked her head into the cage as she tried to escape. Chen Guo was afraid that she might have injured herself, so he picked up a thick layer of cloth to cushion her head. Just what has she seen to have made her so? His eyes scanned the 3 cages. The old man cowered inside the cage, his arms were shielding his head like an ostrich hiding its head in the sand. He did not dare look outwards. Of the 3, the old man had been trapped there the longest and seen the most. When he saw the single-armed man, he had closed his eyes. Obviously, he was afraid that he might accidentally see something that he should not. The young woman in the middle had the most agitated reaction. She threw her head repeatedly against the cage, and the fear was practically pouring out of her eyes. The reactions of these 2 people were understandable. Chen Guo, though, was exceptionally cautious of the middle-aged man. He was also showing signs of fear. His body was shaking, and his hands were gripped tightly together. His reaction and expression were flawless. If this was anyone else, they would definitely have been fooled, but not Chen Guo. It was not that Chen Guo had that great of an observation power, but he had managed to acquire the information on the patients of the 3rd sick hall before he arrived, and this middle-aged man was most likely patient number 5, Su Tong. The culprits came from the 3rd sick hall, so why did he end up as the victim? Starting from this point, Chen Guo slowly discovered more anomalies about the middle-aged man. For example, his relatively clean appearance. His head was not shaved, and his hands had been kept hidden under his clothes throughout. It was only when Chen Guo dragged the single-armed man into the room that the middle-aged man let it slip. Chen Guo saw it clearly, there was a very deep wound on the middle-aged man's left hand. It was a bite mark, and it was still bleeding. Your hand is injured. Chen Guo walked to the last iron cage holding the hammer. When he entered the nurse's station at the 1st sick hall, he had noticed the paint stain on the iron cage. Following the station, he had seen a splatter that was mixed with oil and blood on the wall outside of the nurse's station. At the time, he had thought that it was left behind by the victim inside the cage, but he had inspected the old man's body, and he was uninjured, so now he believed that the blood came from the culprit who had dragged the old man away. Oil was mixed with blood, so the most logical speculation was that the old man was gripping the wall, unwilling to be dragged away. The culprit tried to pry the old man's hands off the wall but ended up being bitten by the old man. It perfectly explained how both oil and blood could be left on the same spot on the wall. When the door opened, Chen Guo noticed that neither of the twisted face nor the single-armed man's arms were injured. If there were no other residents inside this mental hospital, then Chen Guo could have guaranteed that the culprit who dragged the old man away from the 1st sick hall was this middle-aged man. He was one of the culprits at the mental hospital. When they discovered there were people outside the hospital, to prevent the old man from being discovered, they moved him to the 2nd sick hall's laundry room urgently. The iron hammer swaying before him, the middle-aged man's eyes that looked at Chen Guo were slowly filled with fear. I will not hurt you, I just want you to answer a few of my questions honestly. Chen Guo looked at the middle-aged man, and the other party was still pretending to be dumb, too afraid to communicate. Don't feel like talking. Chen Guo removed the 2 cameras, placed them aside and blocked the cameras. He slowly turned back around and slammed the hammer into the iron cage. With just one knock, the iron cage became slightly misshapen. Still not talking. Chen Guo continued to whack at the iron cage, and the rods twisted and turned until only 3/4 of the movable space remained. What do you want to know? The middle-aged man saw the iron hammer that came closer and closer to him, and his expression fell. How come this man feels like he is even crazier than I am? I'm not one to force people to do things that they don't want to. I just have some simple questions. Chen Guo looked at the twisted iron cage and placed his hammer down. What is your name? The middle-aged paused for about 2 seconds before speaking again. Wang Haiming. Wang Haiming. When he heard this name, Chen Ji's heart skipped a beat, and a huge wave proceeded to swallow it. This man knows Wang Haiming. The man probably just wanted to fool Chen Gu by giving a random name. He did not expect Chen Gu to know Wang Haiming. You're lying. Without leaving a chance for the middle-aged man to explain, Chen Gu swung his hammer at the iron cage. The hammer cut through the air, and the hair on the middle-aged man's body stood on end. My name is Xiong Qing. My name is Xiong Qing. Chen Gu was in no time for games and continued to rain punishment down on the iron cage. The space within the cage continued to shrink, and the iron rods could have snapped at any moment. The middle-aged man screamed, "Didn't you say you would not force people to do things they don't want to?" Chen Gu ignored him. After a few more minutes of heavy work, the iron cage was completely misshapen. Even with the key, it could not be opened anymore. It would require some time before Chen Gu could smash the iron cage into smithereens, but Chen Gu was lacking time. His pupils narrowed as he reached out to grip the middle-aged man's calf. I'm asking you one more time, what is your name? The man did not know what Chen Gu was up to, and he hesitated. Chen Gu was trapped inside a mental hospital with more than one source of dangerous threats. He could not continue to be kind. He placed the middle-aged man's calf before him and aimed the iron hammer right at it. A shrill scream tore through the night. Chen Gu had no sympathy for those who shoved living humans into cages. He picked up the iron hammer and pulled out the middle-aged man's other calf. As the iron hammer went flying down, the middle-aged man screamed, and he shrank away from the hammer. Su Tong. My name is Su Tong. See, was that so hard? Chen Gu stopped. If you would have been honest with me from the beginning, we could have skipped all that. Then he squatted down beside the iron cage. Just now, you mentioned Wang Haiming. What is your relationship with him? Has he stayed at the third sick hall before? Is that how you know him? Why would you ask that? Su Tong immediately regretted asking that question. He looked at the hammer in Chen Ji's hands, and his mouth turned slippery again. Wang Haiming was once a patient here. He was locked inside the third sick hall multiple times due to repeated offenses. That man is very interesting. Be more specific. He was a low-risk patient. He stayed on the second floor of the second sick hall, but the man had something wrong with his mind. He kept saying that he was not crazy. A disgusting smile appeared on Su Tong's lips. Actually, we all know that we are perfectly fine, but only an idiot like him would announce it out loud. To be called an idiot by a diagnosed mental patient, if Wang Haiming was still alive, Chen Gu wondered how he would have felt. A flash of wickedness entered Su Tong's smile. His perspective was different from normal people. Perhaps until now, he still believed he was not ill. And then Chen Gu realized how dangerous it was to communicate with mental patients, especially one like Su Tong. He was wary of being unconsciously sucked into their world, influenced by their twisted worldview. Wang Haiming not only refused the treatment by the hospital, but when the doctors tried to administer the treatment, he started fighting with the nurses and doctors. Injuring the workers was the biggest mistake at this hospital. The day it happened, Wang Haiming was punished by the hospital. Initially he was just sent to the quarantine room, but it only made him worse. After he was released from the place, he got into a physical altercation with the nurse because he refused to take his medicine. He announced that he was a millionaire who could buy half of the hospital if he wanted to. He promised that he would make these doctors and nurses pay. After 10 minutes, the idiot paid for what he said. The hospital workers came with a straitjacket and moved him into the third sick hall's quarantine room. That was his first visit to the third sick hall. We were happy to welcome a new friend, but he was very unfriendly. He even spat at me. He looked energetic, and as he was escorted, his mouth never stopped cursing. This poor newbie did not know what being sent to the third sick hall meant, but he would know soon enough. The third sick hall's quarantine room has an alternative name: electroshock therapy room. It is a common method to treat mental illness. The doctors who had used it all said it was incredibly effective. Of course, as a registered private hospital, to ensure patient safety and comfort, they would cooperate with estheticians before beginning the treatment. The quarantine room has good sound insulation. When Wang Haiming exited the room, he was much more pliable. All of us thought the treatment had been highly effective. After a few days of peace, Wang Haiming got into argument with the workers for hiding medicine. This man had a natural instinct for adventure. Perhaps he was indeed a millionaire before being admitted into the hospital. When he exited the quarantine room for the second time, we all thought that he would finally admit to his fate, but the man planned a midnight escape, and to everyone's surprise, he succeeded. Even though he was captured the next day, he made use of that one night of freedom to contact his ex-wife. We have no idea what he told her, but in less than a month, she arrived to arrange for him to leave the hospital. From Su Tong's lips, Chen Gu gained a deeper understanding of Wang Haiming. How do you know so much about the man? After he was captured, he was detained. The hospital had him situated in the 3rd sick hall's room 3, but he almost died in that room. Since there was no other option, the hospital workers arranged for him to temporarily stay with me. The twisted expression on Su Tong's face slowly returned to normal. Then, do you know what happened to him in room 3? He saw many people, there were many people inside the room. He told you all that himself. Chen Gu did not think things would be so complicated. Wang Haiming once stayed inside the 3rd room. Why would I talk to an idiot? Su Tong scoffed with condescension. That idiot would mumble to himself every night, and I overheard his conversation. Chen Gu nodded. He needed to enter the 3rd sick hall personally to know more about its mystery. The second question, why would patients from the 3rd sick hall like yourself return to this place after the hospital was closed down? Of course, we have our reasons. I cannot answer on other people's behalf, but for me, Su Tong looked at Chen Gu. Only by staying here can I escape from your surveillance. Only by staying here will you not disturb me. It's time for you to take your medicine. Chen Gu stood up. He believed that Su Tong did not lie to him. The old man and young woman were shaking in fear when they saw the single-armed man, but they did not show any response when they were in Su Tong's proximity. The old man even dared to bite his hand. This went to show, unlike the twisted face and single-armed man, Su Tong had not done those crazy things. The iron cage was broken due to Chen Ji's assault. He placed the hammer beside him and asked, I heard a female nurse was killed inside the 3rd sick hall, do you know about this? Yes. The hospital even organized a mourning ceremony in the 2nd sick hall for her, hoping it would be a lesson for the patients' families, and the workers. Su Tong seemed to expect what Chen Gu would ask next. He shrugged and said, I really had nothing to do with the nurse's death. The police asked me, and I stayed in my room that night. I didn't say a word to her, I didn't even see her that night. After nodding, Chen Gu asked Su Tong questions about the hospital director. Unfortunately, Su Tong's knowledge of this was limited. Su Tong was an honest patient. His sickness prevented him from communication with living people, and the greater the number of people around him, the more unsettled he would be. He felt like everyone was sane, and they were one person toying with him. However, if he was kept in a small room with a limited amount of people, he would be just like a normal person. Hopefully, everything you've said is the truth. Chen Gu re-equipped the 2 cameras and took out his phone to glance at it. After such a long period of a black screen, his popularity did not drop. In fact, it had shot over 150,000 viewers. What's going on? Looking at the chat log, Chen Gu realized that even though he had blocked the cameras, the audio recorder was still stuck to his lapel. Su Tong's scream, the information about the nurse's death, Wang Haiming's history, and the mystery of the 3rd sick hall had all been broadcasted. Due to this coincidence, Chen Ji's live stream had continued to climb the popularity ladder. The chat log kept refreshing. This is all too real. There were viewers who gave him likes and virtual presents. Chen Gu did not even know what to say. Since things had reached this stage, Chen Gu decided to throw caution to the wind. Thank you everyone for the presents and likes. Thank you for tuning into my live stream. Chen Gu aimed the camera at himself. What you've seen and heard might not be fake. Tonight, I'll bring you a live stream that can never be replicated. Chen Gu exited the laundry room to head for the second floor, to find the room Wang Haiming had once stayed in. There were 2 beds placed in the small room. The mattress and covers had been taken away, and only 2 bed frames remained. Perhaps due to safety concerns, there was nothing sharp in the room. Even the bed's edges had purposely been smoothened. Wang Haiming was sent into the hospital by his second wife. Perhaps there was something wrong with his head, but it shouldn't have been that serious. I believe this was a conspiracy against the man. Composing all the information he had, Chen Gu realized that Wang Haiming had led a complicated life. His life had big ups and big downs, but he had never given up, never stopped resisting or struggling. Be it being forcibly sent into the mental hospital or fighting for his body with a monster after he left the hospital, he never stopped fighting. He was not a saint either, considering he had cheated on his first wife, but from a certain perspective, he had already paid more than enough for his sin. Every door to the sick room is equipped with a single-sided lock, so even with the key, the door could only be opened from the outside. There are safety doors at every 20 meters along the corridor, and there were nurses and workers patrolling nightly, so how did Wang Haiming manage to escape? Chen Gu sat on the bed frame and studied the window that was boarded up. Jumped down from the window. Prying off the wooden boards, Chen Gu realized that the window was strengthened with steel netting. It was not the exit he was looking for. Furthermore, the hospital was surrounded by a 2-meter-tall cement wall and a lush forest beyond that. Without a proper guide, getting lost was common. But under these conditions, Wang Haiming not only managed to escape, he also got in touch with his ex-wife to get her to save him. This whole process could have been made into a movie. It's too difficult for Wang Haiming to have escaped this place alone. He should have relied on the power of that monster inside him as well. They managed to escape this hospital by working together. After all, their united goal was to leave this mental hospital. Chen Gu understood this, but another question remained. When did the monster enter Wang Haiming's body? Remembering his conversation with Su Tong, Chen Gu discovered something strange about Wang Haiming. Not long after his first shock therapy, he started to provoke the doctors and even physically assaulted a nurse, and the reason was simply hiding medicine. This could be understood for a crazy person, but Wang Haiming was not a crazy person. Did he do this on purpose? He wanted to get back into the third sick hall. Chen Gu examined this simple sick room. The only spot that could have hidden something was behind the curtain and under the bed. Standing up, Chen Gu moved the 2 bed frames. On one of the walls that was covered by the bed earlier, and he made a new discovery. Someone had used their fingernails to carve out a diary of sorts on the white paint. Due to the passage of time, most of the words were unreadable, but Chen Gu got the gist of it. Is it Wang Haiming's handwriting? Chen Gu closed the door, shone his flashlight on the wall, and started to read the words on it. Have I really gone crazy? 2 workers and a doctor hauled me into the electroshock room. The bunch of animals locked the door, so technically, no one should have been able to come in. Why did I see 4 people in the room after the therapy? Who was the one wearing the patient's garb? Wang Haiming probably left this behind. In a room without any entertainment devices, keeping a diary became his only entertainment. It was here, after plenty of rumination, that he realized he was different from those around him. Is it a hallucination caused by the shock? Why could he talk to me? Why can only I see him? He said that he can help me escape, but in return, I have to agree to one of his conditions. This is truly a devil's bargain, but I have no choice. Perhaps something is wrong. Could it be those pills? I find myself falling asleep easily like someone has poured lead into my brain. I have to leave this place. The devil doesn't seem like he can leave the third sick hall. I'll need to find him there if I want to escape from this hospital. The workers here are heartless animals. I will ruin this place, I swear. After entering that room for the second time, I agreed to his demand. After completing the ritual inside the bathroom, he entered my body. Have I really gone insane to believe there is a devil in this world and accepted his trade? The diary stopped here abruptly. After the trade, perhaps only Wang Haiming himself knew what happened to him. The monster inside Wang Haiming probably came from the third sick hall, and the ritual was completed in the bathroom. Could it be that the ritual required a mirror? In that case, the monster that possessed Wang Haiming was not some kind of devil but a common mirror monster. Chen Gu knew a thing or two about mirror monsters. They were not particularly strong but extremely cunning. There were no other clues in the room, so Chen Gu left. The mirror monster on Wang Haiming came from the third sick hall, and the tall monster on Wang Xinglong also came from the third sick hall. Why wouldn't the monsters stay there? Chen Gu needed more answers. He grabbed the hammer, whistled to get the white cat, and prepared to head into the third sick hall. He came back to the hallway connecting the two buildings on the fourth floor. Twisted Face had used this path to escape into the third sick hall. The salt hasn't been moved, so no one has passed this way. Pushing open the steel door, Chen Gu felt submerged in the darkness. The tiles under his feet were moving, and as he moved across the corridor in the third sick hall, there was a bad feeling that settled over him. He felt cold, like some scary monster was staring at him. Even the white cat, which was not afraid of anything, hid behind his ankle. If not for the jacket on Chen Gu, he believed that the cat would have run already. The clue left behind by my parents is here. No matter what, I cannot turn back. Chen Gu opened half of his backpack and pulled on the cleaver so that the handle was exposed. This way, he could grab it any time he wanted. It's about time. Chen Gu looked at his phone. It was 11:51 p.m. Another 9 minutes, and it would be midnight. Chen Gu experienced a strange feeling as he stepped into the sick hall. It felt like the entire third sick hall was a large living entity, and the cold draft that caressed Chen Ji's body was its breathing.